Hey there, and welcome to Beyond the Veil. I'm here to help you drift off into a peaceful sleep, offering soothing stories and gentle guidance. Before we settle into dreamland, let me know in the comments, which country are you from? And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more restful nights. The year is 1906. The air hangs thick and heavy with the humidity of Natal, a province nestled on the eastern coast of South Africa. Rolling green hills, punctuated by the occasional rocky outcrop, stretch as far as the eye can see, a landscape both beautiful and unforgiving. Colonial influence is keenly felt. British rule is firmly established. Yet the traditions and beliefs of the Zulu people remain a powerful undercurrent in the region that I end this setting, a small haven of European culture and Catholic faith stands in stark contrast to the surrounding environment. St. Michael's Mission, more than just a church, it is a boarding school for young girls, primarily of Zulu and mixed heritage. Here, under the watchful eyes of nuns and priests, they receive an education intended to guide them toward a life of piety and service. The mission, with its simple stone buildings and meticulously kept gardens, is intended to be a place of order, discipline, and unwavering faith. Within these walls lived Clara Germana Seal, a name soon to be whispered with a mixture of fear and awe. Clara was, by all accounts, an unremarkable girl. A diligent student, perhaps a little shy, she was known for her quiet demeanor and devout adherence to the teachings of the church. She was a face in the crowd, one of many young girls seeking knowledge and spiritual guidance within the confines of St. Michael's. Nothing about her suggested the storm that was about to erupt, but the tranquility of St. Michael's was deceptive. Beneath the surface of routine and religious observance, a disquieting energy began to stir. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. A hushed conversation overheard in the dormitory, a nervous glance exchanged during prayer. These were the first tremors of a phenomenon that would soon shatter the peaceful facade of the mission and send ripples of shock and disbelief far beyond the borders of Natal. Clara Germana Seal, the quiet schoolgirl, would soon become the focal point of a terrifying drama. Whispers began to circulate, fueled by terrified glances and hushed tones. They spoke of strange occurrences, of unsettling behavior, of a darkness that seemed to emanate from within Clara herself. These were more than just childish rumors. They were the first warnings of something truly extraordinary, something that defied rational explanation. Unbeknownst to Clara, or perhaps already known to a darker presence within her, she was about to become a battleground. A battleground between the earthly and the unearthly, between the sacred and the profane. The calm of St. Michael's was about to be shattered by claims so outlandish, so terrifying, that they would challenge the very foundations of faith and reason. For Clara Germana Seal was about to be accused of something almost unthinkable, possession by the devil himself, and the evidence, as recounted by those who witnessed it, was nothing short of horrifying. Claims of speaking in tongues, of unnatural strength, of levitation, and a violent aversion to anything holy would soon engulf Clara and St. Michael's Mission in a vortex of fear, disbelief, and desperate attempts at exorcism. Before the whispers turned to screams, before the claims of demonic possession consumed her identity, Clara Germana Seal was simply Clara, born into a Zulu family in the late 19th century. Her early life was steeped in the traditions and beliefs of her ancestors, the vibrant colors of tribal clothing, the rhythmic beat of drums. During ceremonies, the ancestral stories passed down through generations. These were the foundations upon which her young life was built. However, Clara's path diverged from the traditional when her family, seeking a better future and drawn by the promises of education and spiritual enlightenment, made the decision to entrust her to St. Michael's Mission. It was a sacrifice, a severing of ties with the familiar, but one made with the hope of a brighter tomorrow for their daughter. Life at the mission was a stark contrast to the world she had known. The rigid structure of the school day, the strict adherence to religious doctrine, the foreign language spoken by the nuns and priests, all of this was new and, at times, overwhelming. Yet, Clara adapted with a quiet resilience. She embraced the opportunity to learn, excelling in her studies and demonstrating a genuine thirst for knowledge. Her personality, even then, was marked by a certain reserve. She wasn't the most outgoing of the girls, preferring the company of her books to boisterous games in the courtyard, but she possessed a gentle kindness, a quiet empathy that drew others to her. She was a good listener, a confidant to her fellow students, a shoulder to cry on in times of homesickness or disappointment. Within the mission community, Clara was known for her devout faith. She attended Mass regularly, prayed diligently, and showed a sincere interest in the teachings of the Church. The nuns often remarked on her piety, seeing her as a model student, an example of the transformative power of religious education. There was no hint of the darkness that would later be attributed to her. Her days were filled with the routine of mission life, lessons in reading, writing, and arithmetic, religious instruction, chores around the school, and quiet evenings spent studying or praying. She formed close bonds with some of the other girls, sharing secrets, dreams, and the anxieties of adolescence. They confided in each other about their fears of the future, their hopes for marriage, and their longing for home. Clara's world, though confined within the walls of St. Michael's, was not devoid of joy or connection. She found solace in her faith, comfort in her friendships, and a sense of purpose in her studies. She was, in essence, an ordinary girl, living an ordinary life, in an extraordinary time and place. This ordinariness is crucial to remember, because it underscores the sheer improbability of what was to come. It highlights the stark contrast between the Clara Germana Seal everyone knew and the figure she would become, a figure of terror, a vessel of unimaginable evil, at least according to the terrified accounts that would soon emerge from St. Michael's mission. The transformation, when it occurred, would be all the more shocking because of the unremarkable life that preceded it. The first signs were subtle, easily dismissed as the quirks of a young girl under pressure. A fleeting expression of anger that seemed out of character, a moment of vacant staring that lasted a little too long, a sudden aversion to a particular hymn during chapel. These were the initial cracks in the facade of Clara's ordinary existence. They were small enough to be ignored, but unsettling enough to plant a seed of unease in the minds of those who observed them. One of the first incidents occurred during evening prayers. As the girls knelt in the dimly lit chapel, reciting the familiar words, Clara suddenly gasped, clutching her chest as if in pain. Her face contorted in a grimace, and she began to tremble violently. The nun leading the prayer, Sister Agnes, rushed to her side, concerned that she was ill. But when Sister Agnes touched her, Clara recoiled as if burned, letting out a strangled cry. The other girls watched in stunned silence, their prayers forgotten. The incident was quickly attributed to a sudden fever or a passing ailment. Clara was taken to the infirmary, where she rested for the remainder of the evening. By morning, she seemed to have recovered, offering a sheepish apology for disrupting the prayers, but the memory of her distress lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. Other strange occurrences followed. During lessons, Clara would sometimes lapse into a trance-like state, her eyes unfocused, her body rigid. When questioned, she claimed to have no memory of these episodes. Her classmates began to whisper amongst themselves, speculating about what might be wrong with her. Some suggested she was simply overwhelmed by her studies, while others hinted at something more sinister. The whispers grew louder after an incident in the garden. Clara, who usually enjoyed tending to the flowers, suddenly began to scream, pointing to a statue of the Virgin Mary. Her face was contorted with fear and disgust, and she shrieked at the statue, using language that was shocking and inappropriate for a girl of her age and religious upbringing. The other girls fled in terror, convinced that something was terribly wrong. These incidents, though seemingly isolated, began to paint a disturbing picture. Clara, the quiet, devout schoolgirl, was exhibiting behaviors that were erratic, inexplicable, and deeply unsettling. The rumors spread like wildfire through the mission. Fueled by fear and speculation, the nuns, initially dismissive, began to Take notice, their concern growing with each new report. The atmosphere at St. Michael's became increasingly tense. The once peaceful routine was now punctuated by moments of anxiety and apprehension. The girls walked on eggshells, afraid of provoking Clara or witnessing another disturbing episode. The nuns, unsure of how to handle the situation, began to observe Clara more closely, searching for clues to explain her strange behavior. The unease was palpable that it hung in the air like a heavy fog, permeating every corner of the mission. The laughter and carefree chatter that had once filled the halls were replaced by hushed whispers and nervous glances. The sense of safety and security that the mission had provided was slowly eroding, replaced by a growing fear of the unknown. The ordinary was giving way to the extraordinary, and St. Michael's was about to be plunged into a darkness that no one could have anticipated. The growing unease reached a fever pitch when Clara reportedly confessed to making a pact with Satan. The circumstances surrounding this confession remained shrouded in mystery and conflicting accounts. Some say it was during a private meeting with one of the nuns, Sister Teresa, that Clara, overcome with remorse and terror, blurted out the shocking admission. Others claim it occurred during a particularly intense episode, when Clara, in a state of apparent delirium, raved about a dark figure who had promised her power and influence in exchange for her soul. Regardless of the precise details, the impact of the confession was seismic to the highly religious environment of St. Michael's mission. Such an admission was not merely a transgression, it was an act of ultimate betrayal, a rejection of God and an embrace of the forces of evil. It confirmed the worst fears of the nuns and plunged the mission into a state of near-hysteria. To understand the gravity of this confession, it's crucial to consider the religious context of the time. In 1906, the Catholic Church held immense sway over the lives of its followers. Belief in the devil and the reality of demonic influence was deeply ingrained in the collective consciousness. The idea of a pact with Satan, a deliberate and conscious agreement to serve the forces of darkness, was a terrifying concept that evoked images of eternal damnation and unspeakable suffering. Moreover, the specific setting of colonial Natal adds another layer of complexity. The missionaries viewed their work as a sacred duty, a mission to bring the light of Christianity to what they perceived as a pagan land. The notion that one of their own students, a girl entrusted to their care, could have succumbed to the devil's influence was a profound blow to their sense of purpose and a challenge to their authority. It suggested that the darkness they sought to eradicate was not confined to the outside world but had somehow infiltrated the very heart of their mission. The confession also tapped into pre-existing anxieties and superstitions within the Zulu community. While many had converted to Christianity, traditional beliefs about witchcraft and ancestral spirits still held considerable influence. The idea of a young woman possessed by evil forces resonated with these cultural narratives, adding another layer of fear and fascination to the unfolding drama. The confession of a pact with Satan was therefore far more than a personal crisis for Clara. It was a spiritual crisis for the entire mission, a challenge to their faith, their authority, and their very understanding of the world. It transformed Clara from a troubled student into a symbol of the battle between good and evil, a pawn in a cosmic struggle for the souls of humanity. The subsequent events would be shaped by this perception, as the nuns and priests of St. Michael's prepared to confront what they believed was a very real and terrifying demonic presence. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of their faith and challenge the boundaries of human understanding. With the confession hanging in the air like a Damoclean sword, the manifestations of Clara's alleged possession became increasingly dramatic and disturbing. The accounts of those who witnessed these events, while colored by their religious beliefs and the pervasive atmosphere of fear, paint a picture of a young woman seemingly transformed by an external force. It is crucial to remember that these accounts are filtered through the lens of faith and must be examined with a critical eye. One of the most frequently cited phenomena was Clara's ability to speak in languages she had never learned. Witnesses claimed she uttered phrases in Latin, Greek, German, and even French. Languages completely foreign to her Zulu upbringing and her limited education at the mission, this glossolalia, or speaking in tongues, was not the ecstatic, prayerful utterance sometimes associated with religious fervor. Instead, it was described as guttural, aggressive, and often blasphemous, filled with curses and insults directed at the church and its teachings. Perhaps the most sensational claim was that of levitation. Several witnesses, including nuns and other students, reported seeing Clara lifted off the ground, sometimes only a few inches, other times several feet. These levitations were said to occur during moments of heightened agitation, often accompanied by violent thrashing and screaming. The accounts describe Clara floating in the air, seemingly defying gravity, her body contorted in unnatural positions. Another common manifestation was Clara's extreme aversion to holy symbols and objects. The mere sight of a crucifix, a rosary, or holy water would send her into a frenzy. She would scream, writhe, and attempt to escape, as if burned by their presence. Holy water, in particular, was said to have a powerful effect on her, causing her skin to blister and smoke upon contact. These reactions were interpreted as evidence of the demon's hatred for anything sacred. Furthermore, witnesses described Clara exhibiting displays of superhuman strength. A small, slender girl, she was reportedly able to overpower multiple adults, resisting their attempts to restrain her with an unnatural force. She would thrash, kick, and bite, displaying a ferocity that seemed impossible for someone of her size and physical condition. These displays of strength were attributed to the demon possessing her, lending her its own supernatural power. These manifestations, taken together, created a terrifying spectacle. The witnesses, already primed by the confession and the prevailing religious beliefs, interpreted these events as irrefutable proof of demonic possession. The story of Clara Germana Seal quickly spread beyond the confines of St. Michael's mission, attracting attention from religious authorities, journalists, and curious onlookers, all eager to witness the extraordinary events for themselves. The small, quiet schoolgirl had become a living testament to the power of evil, a focal point for a battle between the earthly and the unearthly. As the reported manifestations of Clara's possession escalated, the need for a qualified authority became paramount. Enter Father Erasmus Horner, a priest whose role would become central to the unfolding drama. Unlike some of the more zealous members of the clergy, Father Horner was known for his measured demeanor, his intellectual curiosity, and a certain degree of skepticism towards claims of the supernatural. Born in Germany, Father Horner had dedicated his life to the church, serving in various missionary posts before arriving in Natal. He possessed a sharp mind, a deep understanding of theology, and a practical approach to pastoral care. He was well respected within the religious community for his wisdom and his ability to navigate complex situations with both compassion and discernment. Initially, Father Horner approached the reports of Clara's possession with caution. He had witnessed instances of hysteria and religious fervor in the past and was wary of jumping to conclusions. He believed in the power of suggestion and the potential for psychological factors to influence behavior. He was not convinced that Clara was truly possessed by a demon. He suspected there might be a more rational explanation for her disturbing behavior. However, as the reports continued to pour in, and as he personally witnessed some of the more extraordinary manifestations, Father Horner began to reconsider his initial skepticism. He couldn't deny the sheer intensity of Clara's reactions, the apparent intelligence behind the blasphemous utterances, and the seemingly inexplicable physical phenomena that he found himself wrestling with. His own beliefs, torn between his rational mind and the undeniable evidence before him. Despite his lingering doubts, Father Horner recognized the urgency of the situation. The mission was in a state of turmoil, the students were terrified, and Clara herself was clearly suffering. He felt a responsibility to intervene, to offer whatever help he could, whether it be through spiritual guidance, psychological support, or, if necessary, the formal rite of exorcism. Before embarking on any drastic measures, Father Horner dedicated himself to a thorough investigation that he interviewed the nuns and students who had witnessed Clara's behavior, carefully documenting their accounts that he spent time with Clara herself, attempting to establish a rapport and understand the root of her distress, that he consulted with other priests and religious authorities, seeking their advice and guidance, that he also delved into the church's teachings on demonic possession, studying the scriptures, the writings of the saints, and the official guidelines for performing exorcisms, that he wanted to be fully prepared for whatever he might encounter, both spiritually and practically. Father Horner's initial skepticism, combined with his intellectual rigor and his deep sense of responsibility, made him an unusual but ultimately crucial figure in the Clara Germana Seal case. That he was not a fire and brimstone preacher eager to confront the devil head-on, that he was a thoughtful, compassionate priest who approached the situation with a blend of faith and reason. His journey from skepticism to reluctant acceptance would shape the course of the exorcism and contribute to the enduring mystery surrounding the events at St. Michael's Mission. Having exhausted all other avenues, Father Horner, with a heavy heart and a sense of profound responsibility, initiated the first exorcism attempts. These were not undertaken lightly, but with the full weight of the Church's authority and the solemn understanding of the spiritual battle that lay ahead. The rituals were conducted in a secluded room within the mission, away from the prying eyes of the students and the growing media attention. The initial exorcism rites followed the traditional Roman Catholic formula. Father Horner, clad in his priestly robes, recited prayers, chanted litanies, and invoked the names of God, Jesus Christ, and the Virgin Mary. He sprinkled holy water, displayed the crucifix, and commanded the demon to depart from Clara's body in the name of the divine. The immediate response was one of violent resistance. Clara, seemingly possessed by an uncontrollable rage, screamed, thrashed, and spat at Father Horner, her body contorting in unnatural positions. The blasphemous utterances became more intense, the curses more vile, the insults more personal. The demon, if that's what it was, seemed to revel in its defiance, mocking the priest and the sacred rituals. The physical strain on Clara was immense. Her face was flushed, her eyes bloodshot, her body drenched in sweat. Yet, despite her apparent exhaustion, she continued to fight with a superhuman strength that defied explanation. It took several people to restrain her, holding her down as Father Horner continued the exorcism rites. As the exorcism progressed, the atmosphere in the room grew increasingly charged. The air seemed to crackle with an unseen energy. The temperature fluctuated wildly, shifting from icy cold to stifling heat. Strange noises echoed through the room, guttural growls, piercing shrieks, and whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. The initial exorcism attempts proved largely unsuccessful. While there were moments when Clara seemed to weaken, when the demon's grip appeared to loosen, it always regained control, its defiance growing even stronger. Father Horner found himself locked in a spiritual battle with an entity that seemed determined to resist him at every turn. The escalating intensity of the events took a toll on everyone involved. Father Horner, despite his initial skepticism, was deeply shaken by the experience that he witnessed firsthand. The seemingly inexplicable phenomena, the raw hatred, and the terrifying power that emanated from Clara. He began to question his own sanity, wondering if he was truly equipped to confront such a force of evil. The nuns and other witnesses were equally affected. They watched in horror as Clara, the girl they had known and cared for, was transformed into a vessel of unimaginable darkness. Their faith was tested, their nerves frayed, their sleep haunted by nightmares. The initial exorcism attempts, far from resolving the situation, only served to intensify the drama and deepen the mystery. They confirmed the belief that Clara was indeed possessed by a powerful and malevolent force, a force that was determined to resist all attempts at expulsion. The battle had begun, and the outcome was far from certain. The unsuccessful initial exorcism attempts did little to quell the growing frenzy surrounding Clara Germana Seal. Instead, they seemed to fuel the flames of public fascination, transforming a local story into an international sensation. the whispers and rumors that had initially circulated within St. Michael's Mission soon reached the ears of the outside world, carried by word of mouth, hushed conversations, and, eventually, sensationalized newspaper reports. The story of a young Zulu schoolgirl possessed by the devil, capable of speaking in unknown languages and defying the laws of physics, was irresistible to the media. Journalists from across South Africa and even from overseas flocked to Natal, eager to witness the extraordinary events for themselves and to capture the story for their readers. The arrival of the press corps transformed the atmosphere around St. Michael's Mission. The once secluded haven was now besieged by reporters, photographers, and curious onlookers, all vying for a glimpse of Clara and a piece of the action. The nuns and priests, already struggling to cope with the situation, found themselves overwhelmed by the constant scrutiny and the relentless demands for information. The newspaper reports, often exaggerated and sensationalized, further fueled the public's imagination. Headlines screamed of demonic possession, supernatural phenomena, and a desperate battle between good and evil. The stories were filled with lurid details, often based on hearsay and speculation, that painted a terrifying picture of Clara and the events at St. Michael's. The public fascination with the Clara Germana seal case extended far beyond the confines of the religious community. It tapped into deep-seated anxieties about the supernatural, the unknown, and the perceived threat of evil forces. It also reflected a broader cultural fascination with the exotic and the mysterious, particularly in the context of colonial South Africa. The impact on the local community was profound. Some were genuinely terrified by the reports, convinced that a demonic presence had descended upon their region. Others were skeptical, dismissing the story as religious hysteria or a case of mental illness. Still others were simply curious, drawn to the spectacle and eager to witness the extraordinary events for themselves. The influx of journalists and onlookers also had a significant economic impact on the local area. Hotels and guesthouses were filled to capacity, restaurants and shops did brisk business, and local residents found themselves thrust into the spotlight, offering their own accounts and interpretations of the events. However, the growing media attention also brought its own set of challenges. The constant scrutiny and the sensationalized reports put immense pressure on the nuns and priests at St. Michael's, hindering their ability to care for Clara and manage the situation. The influx of outsiders also disrupted the peace and tranquility of the mission, creating a chaotic and stressful environment. Despite the challenges, the story of Clara Germana seal continued to spread, captivating the world and transforming a small mission in Natal into a focal point for a global fascination with the supernatural. The battle for Clara's soul had become a public spectacle, played out on the pages of newspapers and in the imaginations of people around the world. The continued resistance displayed by Clara during the initial exorcism attempts, coupled with the escalating media frenzy, prompted Father Horner to seek assistance from other religious figures. That he recognized that the situation was beyond his individual capabilities and that a collective effort, drawing upon diverse perspectives and spiritual strengths, was necessary to confront the perceived demonic force. The arrival of other priests and religious authorities brought with it a range of approaches and perspectives on the situation. Some were seasoned exorcists, with years of experience in dealing with alleged cases of demonic possession. They brought with them their own rituals, prayers, and techniques, honed through countless encounters with the forces of darkness. Others were theologians, scholars of religious texts, who sought to understand the theological and spiritual implications of Clara's case. They debated the nature of evil, the power of the devil, and the role of faith in combating demonic influence. Their discussions, often heated and passionate, provided an intellectual counterpoint to the more visceral and emotional aspects of the exorcism. Still others were healers, individuals believed to possess a special gift for spiritual healing and restoration. They focused on Clara's well-being, attempting to soothe her troubled spirit and alleviate her physical suffering. They used prayer, meditation, and Other forms of spiritual healing to try to break the demon's hold on her. The involvement of these diverse religious figures created a complex and at times conflicting dynamic within St. Michael's mission. While they shared a common goal, to free Clara from the perceived demonic influence, they often disagreed on the best way to achieve it. Some advocated for a more aggressive approach, employing forceful commands and intense rituals to drive out the demon. Others favored a more compassionate approach, focusing on prayer, forgiveness, and spiritual healing. These differing approaches reflected broader theological debates within the Church about the nature of evil and the most effective ways to combat it. Some believed that the devil was a powerful and malevolent force that could only be defeated through direct confrontation. Others believed that evil was ultimately a product of human sin and weakness, and that the best way to combat it was through repentance, forgiveness, and spiritual growth. The presence of multiple religious figures also created a sense of competition and rivalry. Each sought to prove the effectiveness of their own methods and to gain the recognition of their peers and the public. This competition, while sometimes productive, also created tension and division within the group, hindering their ability to work together effectively. Despite these challenges, the involvement of other religious figures brought a renewed sense of hope and determination to St. Michael's mission. That it signaled that the Church was taking the Clara Germana Seal case seriously and that it was committed to doing everything possible to help her. It also provided Father Horner with much-needed support and guidance, allowing him to navigate the complex and challenging situation with greater confidence and clarity. The combined efforts of the various religious figures eventually led to a series of exorcism rituals that marked the peak of the entire ordeal. These sessions were characterized by an intensity that far surpassed the initial attempts, pushing Clara, the priests, and the witnesses to their physical and psychological limits. The rituals took place over several days, often lasting for hours at a time. The room where they were conducted was transformed into a sacred space, adorned with crucifixes, rosaries, and other religious symbols. The air was thick with incense, and the sounds of chanting, prayers, and litanies filled the room. During these intense sessions, Clara's behavior became even more erratic and disturbing. The displays of superhuman strength intensified, requiring multiple people to restrain her. The blasphemous utterances became more frequent and more vile, filled with curses, insults, and threats directed at the priests and the Church. The levitations also became more pronounced, with Clara reportedly rising several feet off the ground, her body contorted in unnatural positions. Witnesses described her eyes rolling back in her head, her face contorted in a grimace of pure hatred, and her voice taking on a guttural, inhuman tone. The priests, drawing upon their diverse spiritual strengths, responded with unwavering determination. They recited prayers in Latin, Greek, and Zulu, invoking the names of God, Jesus Christ, and the Virgin Mary. They sprinkled holy water, displayed the crucifix, and commanded the demon to depart from Clara's body in the name of the divine. The battle between good and evil raged within Clara, a psychological and spiritual tug-of-war that threatened to tear her apart. At times, she seemed to weaken, her resistance fading, her eyes filled with a desperate plea for help. But just as quickly, the demon would reassert its control, unleashing a fresh wave of rage and defiance. The psychological toll on Clara was immense. She was trapped within her own body, a prisoner of a force that she could not control. She experienced moments of lucidity, when she was aware of what was happening to her, but was powerless to stop it. The fear, the humiliation, and the sense of helplessness were overwhelming. The physical toll was equally devastating. The constant thrashing, screaming, and resisting left her exhausted, bruised, and battered. She lost weight. Her skin became pale and gaunt, and her eyes were sunken and hollow. She was a shadow of her former self, a victim of a battle that was being waged for her very soul. The priests, too, suffered during these intense exorcism sessions. They were physically and emotionally drained by the constant struggle, the relentless negativity, and the sheer intensity of the experience. They were forced to confront their own fears and doubts, questioning their faith and their ability to overcome the forces of darkness. The witnesses, the nuns and other members of the mission, were also deeply affected. They watched in horror as Clara, the girl they had known and cared for, was subjected to such intense suffering. They prayed, they wept, and they struggled to maintain their faith in the face of such overwhelming evil. The peak of the exorcism was a harrowing experience for everyone involved, a testament to the power of belief, the depths of human suffering, and the enduring mystery of the battle between good and evil. It was a moment of profound intensity that would leave an indelible mark on all who witnessed it. After days of intense struggle and unwavering faith, the exorcism of Clara Germana Seal reportedly reached its climax. The accounts of the resolution are, like much of the story, steeped in religious interpretation and lack independent verification. However, according to those who witnessed it, the final moments were dramatic and transformative. The turning point reportedly occurred during a particularly intense session. As the priests recited prayers and commanded the demon to depart, Clara suddenly fell silent. Her body, which had been writhing and thrashing uncontrollably, went limp. The blasphemous utterances ceased, replaced by a soft, almost childlike whimper. Witnesses described a palpable shift in the atmosphere of the room. The oppressive darkness that had permeated the space seemed to dissipate, replaced by a sense of peace and tranquility. The air, which had been thick with tension and fear, became calm and still. Father Horner, sensing that the end was near, intensified his prayers, invoking the name of Jesus Christ with renewed fervor. He commanded the demon, in the name of God, to reveal its name and to depart from Clara's body forever. According to the accounts, a voice, guttural and inhuman, then issued from Clara's mouth, identifying itself as multiple demonic entities. The voice screamed in agony, protesting its impending expulsion and vowing revenge. Finally, with a deafening shriek that echoed through the mission, the voice fell silent. Clara's body went completely still. The priests and witnesses held their breath, unsure of what to expect. After a moment of stunned silence, Clara slowly opened her eyes. They were clear and lucid, free from the wild, haunted look that had characterized them during the possession. She looked around the room, confused and disoriented, as if waking from a long and terrible nightmare. The priests cautiously approached her, offering words of comfort and reassurance. They asked her if she remembered what had happened, but she claimed to have no recollection of the events of the past few weeks. She only remembered feeling sick and confused, and then everything went blank. The reported expulsion of the demon was greeted with jubilation and relief. The priests and nuns wept with joy, praising God for his mercy and deliverance. They believed that they had witnessed a miracle, a victory of good over evil. Clara's subsequent state was one of exhaustion and fragility. She was physically and emotionally drained by the ordeal, and it took her several weeks to recover. She required constant care and attention, as she struggled to regain her strength and reintegrate into the normal life of the mission. However, according to the accounts, Clara was no longer troubled by the strange behaviors and disturbing manifestations that had plagued her before the exorcism. The nightmares, the trances, the blasphemous utterances, and the aversion to holy objects had all disappeared. She was, in the eyes of the church, completely healed. The reported resolution of the Clara Germana Seal case brought a sense of closure to St. Michael's mission and to the wider community. The battle had been fought, and good had seemingly triumphed over evil. But the events of those tumultuous weeks would leave an indelible mark on all who had witnessed them, raising profound questions about the nature of belief, the power of suggestion, and the enduring mystery of the human mind. While the religious narrative surrounding Clara Germana Seal emphasizes demonic possession and divine intervention, skeptical perspectives offer alternative explanations for her behavior, grounding the extraordinary claims in the realm of psychology, sociology, and even potential deception. These alternative explanations, while unable to definitively disprove the possibility of demonic influence, provide a framework for understanding the events at St. Michael's Mission through a more rational lens. One of the most compelling alternative explanations is mental illness. In 1906, the understanding and treatment of mental disorders were rudimentary compared to modern standards. Conditions like schizophrenia, hysteria, and dissociative identity disorder were often misdiagnosed or attributed to supernatural causes. It is possible that Clara was suffering from an undiagnosed mental illness that manifested in the strange behaviors and disturbing symptoms attributed to demonic possession. The trances, the blasphemous utterances, and the claims of memory loss could all be consistent with certain mental health conditions. Another possible explanation is psychological trauma. Clara's transition from her traditional Zulu upbringing to the strict and regimented environment of St. Michael's Mission could have been a traumatizing experience. The cultural displacement, the pressure to conform to a new set of beliefs, and the potential for abuse within the mission could have contributed to psychological distress that manifested in unusual behaviors. The confession of a pact with Satan could have been a symbolic expression of her rebellion against the oppressive forces in her life. Mass hysteria, also known as collective hysteria or mass psychogenic illness, is another plausible explanation. Mass hysteria occurs when a group of people, often in a stressful or uncertain environment, develop similar physical or psychological symptoms in response to a perceived threat. The intense atmosphere of fear and religious fervor at St. Michael's Mission could have created the perfect conditions for mass hysteria to take hold. The nuns and students, already primed by their beliefs and the initial reports of Clara's strange behavior, may have unconsciously amplified and reinforced each other's symptoms, leading to a collective delusion of demonic possession. Finally, the possibility of fraud, either conscious or unconscious, cannot be entirely dismissed. Clara may have been deliberately faking some or all of the symptoms of possession, either to gain attention, to rebel against authority, or to manipulate those around her. Alternatively, she may have been unconsciously exaggerating her symptoms in response to the attention and sympathy she received. The power of suggestion and the desire to conform to expectations can be powerful motivators, particularly in a closed and hierarchical environment like St. Michael's Mission. Skeptics and researchers have pointed to several factors that support these alternative explanations. The lack of objective evidence, the reliance on eyewitness accounts that are often contradictory and unreliable, the absence of any independent medical or psychological evaluations, and the potential for cultural biases and religious interpretations all cast doubt on the demonic possession narrative. It is important to note that these alternative explanations are not mutually exclusive. It is possible that a combination of factors, including mental illness, psychological trauma, mass hysteria, and even a degree of conscious or unconscious deception, contributed to the events at St. Michael's Mission. While the demonic possession narrative provides a compelling and dramatic explanation for Clara's behavior, skeptical perspectives offer a more nuanced and rational understanding of the events. By examining the psychological, social, and cultural factors that may have influenced Clara and those around her, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the complexity and ambiguity of the case. Clara Germana Seal's life after the exorcism remains shrouded in mystery, the intense scrutiny and public fascination that surrounded the events at St. Michael's Mission gradually faded, but the experience undoubtedly left a lasting impact on her. Unfortunately, concrete details about her subsequent life are scarce, relying on fragmented records and anecdotal accounts. Following the reported expulsion of the demon, Clara spent several weeks recovering at the mission. The nuns and priests provided her with care and support, helping her to regain her physical strength and emotional stability. She underwent religious counseling and guidance, aimed at reinforcing her faith and helping her to come to terms with what had happened. Whether she ever truly understood the events that transpired remains unknown. As mentioned, she claimed to have no memory of the period when she was supposedly possessed, remembering only feelings of sickness and confusion. This amnesia, whether genuine or a form of psychological coping mechanism, likely shielded her from the full horror of the experience, but it also left her with a sense of uncertainty and unanswered questions. After her recovery, Clara attempted to return to a normal life, resuming her studies at the mission and reintegrating with her fellow students. However, it is difficult to imagine that things could ever be quite the same. She had become a figure of notoriety, a living legend, forever associated with the extraordinary events that had taken place at St. Michael's. It is likely that she faced ongoing stigma and suspicion, both within the mission and in the wider community. Some may have regarded her with awe and reverence, seeing her as a survivor of a spiritual battle. Others may have viewed her with fear and distrust, wondering if the demon might somehow return. The emotional scars of the experience likely ran deep, even if she had no conscious memory of the possession. The trauma of being subjected to exorcism rituals, the physical and psychological abuse she endured, and the constant scrutiny and judgment of others would have undoubtedly left their mark. There are conflicting accounts about what happened to Clara after she left St. Michael's mission. Some sources suggest that she remained within the Catholic Church, dedicating her life to religious service. Others claim that she returned to her family and attempted to reconnect with her Zulu heritage. The truth may lie somewhere in between. Regardless of her ultimate path, it is clear that Clara Germana Seal's life was forever altered by the events of 1906. That she was thrust into the spotlight, subjected to intense scrutiny and judgment, and labeled as either a victim of demonic possession or a perpetrator of fraud. She was robbed of her anonymity and forced to carry the burden of an extraordinary story that she may not have fully understood. Her story serves as a reminder of the power of belief, the depths of human suffering, and the enduring mystery of the human mind. It also highlights the importance of empathy and compassion in dealing with those who are struggling with mental illness, psychological trauma, or other forms of distress. Whether Clara Germana Seal was truly possessed by a demon, or whether she was simply a victim of circumstance, she deserves to be remembered not as a spectacle, but as a human being who endured extraordinary hardship and whose life was forever changed by the events at St. Michael's Mission. Despite the passage of over a century, the story of Clara Germana Seal continues to fascinate and intrigue. The case remains a subject of debate and discussion, a touchstone for conversations about faith, reason, and the enduring mystery of the human condition. Its enduring legacy can be attributed to several factors. Firstly, the Clara Germana Seal case occupies a significant place in the history of alleged demonic possessions. It is one of the most well-documented cases from the early 20th century, attracting widespread media attention and generating a wealth of eyewitness accounts. The dramatic nature of the reported manifestations, the involvement of multiple religious figures, and the cultural context of colonial South Africa all contribute to its enduring appeal. It serves as a historical example of the phenomenon of alleged demonic possession, allowing us to examine the beliefs, anxieties, and cultural narratives that shape our understanding of the supernatural. Secondly, the case raises profound questions about the nature of reality, the power of belief, and the limits of human understanding. It forces us to confront the possibility that there are forces at work in the world that we cannot fully comprehend, whether they be supernatural in origin or rooted in the complexities of the human mind. It challenges us to reconcile our faith with our reason, our intuition with our skepticism. Thirdly, the Clara Germana Seal story has had a lasting influence on popular culture. It has inspired countless books, articles, documentaries, and even fictionalized accounts, all seeking to unravel the mystery of what happened at St. Michael's Mission. The themes of demonic possession, exorcism, and the battle between good and evil are perennial favorites in horror fiction. And the Clara Germana Seal case provides a real-life example that lends a sense of authenticity and credibility to these narratives. The case also resonates with contemporary anxieties about mental health, psychological trauma, and the power of suggestion. It serves as a reminder that mental illness and psychological distress can manifest in a variety of ways, and that it is important to approach these issues with empathy and compassion. It also highlights the dangers of mass hysteria and the potential for cultural biases and religious beliefs to distort our perceptions of reality. Furthermore, the story offers a glimpse into a specific historical and cultural context, colonial South Africa. In the early 20th century, it sheds light on the interactions between European missionaries and the Zulu population, the clash between traditional beliefs and Christian doctrine, and the social and political tensions of the time. It provides a window into a world that is both familiar and foreign, offering insights into the complexities of cultural exchange and the enduring legacy of colonialism. In conclusion, the Clara Germana Seal case continues to captivate and intrigue because it is more than just a story about demonic possession. It is a story about faith, reason, power, and the human condition. It is a story that challenges our beliefs, tests our assumptions, and reminds us of the enduring mysteries that lie at the heart of our existence. Its legacy lies not in providing definitive answers, but in prompting us to ask difficult questions and to engage in a thoughtful and critical examination of the world around us. The story of Clara Germana Seal, even after a century of analysis and speculation, remains shrouded in ambiguity and mystery. Despite the wealth of eyewitness accounts and the extensive documentation of the events at St. Michael's Mission, it is ultimately impossible to definitively prove or disprove the claims of demonic possession. The case serves as a potent reminder of the limitations of human knowledge and the enduring power of belief. The difficulty in definitively resolving the case stems from the very nature of the claims being made. Demonic possession, by its very definition, exists outside the realm of empirical observation and scientific verification. It is a phenomenon that is rooted in religious belief and subjective experience, making it difficult to assess using objective criteria. The eyewitness accounts, while compelling and detailed, are also subject to the biases and limitations of human perception. Memory is fallible, and eyewitness testimony can be influenced by suggestion, expectation, and cultural beliefs. The intense atmosphere of fear and religious fervor at St. Michael's Mission likely amplified these biases, making it difficult to separate fact from fiction. The lack of independent medical or psychological evaluations further complicates the matter. Without access to modern diagnostic tools and psychological assessments, it is impossible to determine whether Clara was suffering from an undiagnosed mental illness, psychological trauma, or some other form of distress. Ultimately, the Clara Germana Seal case forces us to confront the limits of our own understanding. It challenges us to consider the possibility that there are forces at work in the world that we cannot fully explain, whether they be supernatural in origin or rooted in the complexities of the human mind. The case also highlights the power of belief and suggestion. The nuns and priests at St. Michael's Mission, firmly convinced of the reality of demonic possession, may have unconsciously influenced Clara's behavior through their expectations, their interventions, and the overall atmosphere of fear and religious fervor. The power of suggestion can be a powerful force, shaping our perceptions, our behaviors, and even our physical sensations. The Clara Germana Seal story is not simply a historical curiosity, it is a mirror reflecting our own beliefs, anxieties, and cultural narratives. It invites us to examine our own assumptions about the nature of reality, the power of the supernatural, and the limits of human understanding. Perhaps the most important lesson to be learned from the Clara Germana Seal case is the importance of empathy and compassion. Whether Clara was truly possessed by a demon, or whether she was simply a victim of circumstance, she deserves to be remembered as a human being who endured extraordinary hardship and whose life was forever changed by the events at St. Michael's Mission. Her story reminds us to approach those who are struggling with mental illness, psychological trauma, or other forms of distress with understanding, kindness, and a willingness to listen. The Clara Germana Seal case may never be definitively solved, but in its ambiguity and mystery, it continues to challenge us, to provoke us, and to remind us of the enduring Power of Belief and the Enduring Mysteries of the Human Condition. It is a story that will continue to be told and retold, analyzed and debated, for generations to come. In the dim twilight of Illinois, where the roads wind through patches of trees and the whispers of history linger like an unresolved melody, one story stands out as a haunting testament to local lore. Resurrection Mary, an enigmatic figure draped in white, has captured the imaginations of countless drivers who traverse Archer Avenue. This urban legend has taken root in the cultural fabric of the region. Intertwining with narratives of love, longing, and loss, the tale of Resurrection Mary begins. Not just with her spectral appearances but with a sense of profound sorrow that envelopes her character. Eyewitness accounts portray her as a serene young woman, often described as having long flowing hair and an ethereal beauty. As she stands at the roadside, her presence evokes a mix of allure and melancholy. Drivers report feeling an inexplicable pull to stop and offer her a ride, driven by an instinctive urge to help someone seemingly lost. As cars slow down alongside her ghostly figure, passengers often catch glimpses of despair etched across Mary's face. They say she appears silent yet filled with longing, an impression that hints at a deeper story waiting to be unraveled. Those fortunate, or unfortunate, enough to pick her up usually feel a chill permeating the air, as if they are suddenly caught between the realms of life and death. It's in these moments that the legend gains its most chilling form. Just as they approach Resurrection Cemetery, the young woman vanishes without warning. One can imagine this eerie transition, laughter and chatter in the car turning into startled silence as she slips away into thin air, leaving behind only an unsettling sense of mystery and disbelief. This phenomenon has been recounted by numerous witnesses over decades, each adding layers to a narrative that grows more palpable with every retelling. Resurrection Cemetery lies adjacent to Archer Avenue, a site rich with stories interwoven into local mythology. This graveyard not only houses those who have passed but serves as an eternal resting place for those yearning for something left undone in this world. It is here that legends often find sanctuary. It is here that Mary's spirit seems tethered, not merely by fate but by longing. The origins of Resurrection Mary remain steeped in speculation. Some believe she was a young woman who met an untimely end on these very streets after attending a dance at a nearby ballroom, a popular social hub in her time. The tragic narrative suggests she was returning home when disaster struck. Perhaps she had been struck by a car or fell victim to some unforeseen tragedy. Thus, her spirit became bound to this path, forever seeking solace and resolution. As word spread about encounters with this mysterious figure, local lore solidified around her persona, resurrecting tales from generations past while simultaneously creating new ones for today's audiences. Each sighting adds another brushstroke to the canvas that paints Resurrection Mary as both vibrant and tragic. She embodies both youth and eternity while serving as a reminder of how intertwined love can be with loss. Communities near Resurrection Cemetery have grown accustomed to stories surrounding Archer Avenue's phantom hitchhiker. Local residents swap tales over dinner tables or discuss them during nights spent camping under star-filled skies. The excitement surrounding potential encounters fosters camaraderie among neighbors while instilling curiosity in newcomers drawn by these legends. Paranormal enthusiasts flock to experience their own sightings, the thrill compounded when they recount their adventures online or share photos taken along the road after dusk settles over Illinois' landscape. The legend thus propels itself forward as each witness leaves their mark on its ongoing evolution. Mere mortals searching for closure weave their narratives into Mary's enduring saga. This blending of past tragedies and present explorations creates an atmosphere where myth thrives against reality's harsh edges. For many drivers navigating Archer Avenue today, whether intentional adventurers or unsuspecting travelers, the idea of encountering Resurrection Mary adds excitement to their journeys. Yet it also invokes deeper reflections on grief's lasting impressions intertwined within our lives. Resurrection Mary stands not only as an apparition shrouded in white fabric but also encapsulates themes central to human existence. yearning for connection, understanding unresolved. Farewells slipped through fingers like sand on windy days, all highly relatable experiences painted upon collective consciousness through poignant storytelling across generations. As we delve further into this realm where folklore blooms amidst factious aside notes from reality itself, a tale embroiled deeply within early 20th century social norms continues shaping contemporary perspectives, it becomes vital for us all restate far more than just surface-level tales etched upon gravestones sprinkled liberally throughout winter's chill, undulating closer toward springtime warmth fast approaching ahead. Indeed, there lies much more beneath such spectral apparitions than first meets one's eye, and together we shall unravel what truly embodies near justice against mortality's fleeting grasp. As we journey deeper into the legend of Resurrection Mary, it is essential to paint a vivid picture of the setting that hosts this haunting narrative. Archer Avenue, with its winding paths and canopied trees, serves not just as a thoroughfare but as a silent witness to decades of stories, both heartwarming and chilling, that permeate the air, stretching through the edges of justice. Illinois, this avenue evokes an atmosphere heavily laden with history and mystery. The road itself whispers tales of another time, where horse-drawn carriages once trotted along worn pathways. Today, remnants of that past linger alongside contemporary vehicles that navigate its twists and turns. Each bend brings forth a new glimpse into the landscape marked by years of change yet fortified by an eerie consistency. It's an intersection where the old and the new coexist but where shadows from yesteryears often feel like they linger just out of sight. As twilight descends, a shroud of dusky gray envelopes Archer Avenue, casting elongated shadows that stretch across the pavement. The towering trees stand like sentinels on either side, their branches entwine above to create a natural archway that seems to beckon travelers into an embrace, or perhaps a warning. The play of light and shadow, especially during the evening hours, transforms the familiar surroundings into an enchanting yet unsettling experience. Drivers can almost hear the distant echoes of laughter from eras gone by mingled with whispered secrets carried by the evening breeze. Just beyond these reflective shadows lies Resurrection Cemetery, a solemn resting place nestled unexpectedly close to undercurrents of life bustling around it. The cemetery stands as a stark contrast against the vibrancy of Archer Avenue. Appearing almost frozen in time, its wrought iron gates creak open reluctantly to reveal headstones that narrate silent stories of those who now find peace within its confines. The meticulous arrangement of weathered grave markers offers insight into not only individual lives but also generations. Each stone bears witness to shared histories and unfulfilled dreams. Surrounding the cemetery, the air thickens with a palpable sense of spirituality, as if it resonates with sustained emotions lingering long after loved ones have departed. This is where Mary's presence is anchored, between two worlds, living in the memories and hearts of those who remember her, while simultaneously haunting pathways only she seems able to traverse. Where each car passing on Archer Avenue a vessel tethered to an unseen reality, so too do countless souls seem drawn towards their fated intersection with her spirit. The junction of Archer Avenue and Resurrection Cemetery embodies historical significance beyond its ghostly attractions. It reflects societal shifts and cultural evolution throughout decades of American life. In earlier times, this area was teeming with dances and social gatherings held in neighboring halls, a vibrant community backdrop where Mary may have once danced under starlit skies. Now, those celebrations echo only faintly in whispers at dusk, forging connections between celebration and tragedy in an intricate tapestry woven through history. Drivers delightful enough, or unlucky enough, to find themselves on this stretch during nighttime encounters vividly remember peering out their windows searching for signs of life that have long passed them by. The relentless hum of engines serves as a soundtrack while hearts race as tales unfold. Feelings oscillating between excitement and trepidation mingle among imaginative thoughts stirred by this haunted stretch. Moreover, various landmarks dotting Archer Avenue stir an added sense of intrigue alongside its more ghostly inhabitants. The vintage diners offering comfort food and warmth serve as transitional spaces for those who stop momentarily before heading further down the road towards Destiny's Edge. Coffee shops adorned with nostalgia invite patrons to pause while contemplating tales brimming with meaning inspired directly from surrounding lore, blending beautifully into one another through shared conversations shared over steaming mugs. Beyond physical locations lies something even more significant: the emotional essence embedded within every whisper, carried along by gentle winds wafting through treetops or cascading down streets paved over journeys filled with loss and longing, creating deeply relatable sensations thriving quietly beneath paralleled layers, melding seamlessly together over generations. Thus Archer Avenue stands not only as a mere roadway intersecting towns but rather assumes stature as a canvas where echoes recount desires unfulfilled, waiting amidst flickered headlights searching at dusk, for Resurrection Mary still remains just beyond reach, reflecting upon our shared human experience, caught somewhere between memories, embrace along journeys that seem infinite, restless longing gripping our souls, as the legend of Resurrection Mary continues to captivate the imaginations of those who navigate Archer Avenue. First-hand accounts from drivers offer chilling glimpses into encounters with this ghostly figure. Each story adds a layer of intrigue and mystery, as individuals recount their uncanny experiences with the silent young woman in the white dress. One particularly striking account comes from a middle-aged man named Tom, who recalls a night drive along Archer Avenue with his teenage daughter. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and twilight cast an eerie glow over the road. As they neared Resurrection Cemetery, they spotted a young woman standing at the roadside, her white dress billowing gently in the evening breeze. Tom vividly describes her as having long, flowing hair and an expression that conveyed both beauty and sorrow. Compelled by an inexplicable urge, he slowed down and offered her a ride. She didn't say a word, Tom remembers. She just got in calmly and looked straight ahead, almost as if she were lost in thought. The air inside the car turned colder, and despite the warm summer evening, Tom could see his daughter shivering slightly beside him. As they approached the cemetery, he glanced at his passenger in the rearview mirror and was taken aback to see her face, a serene countenance that seemed both alive and ethereal. In an instant that felt like an eternity, Tom gasped as he realized that she had vanished from the back seat without a sound, leaving only an echo of unease behind. His daughter turned to him, wide-eyed, and together they shared a moment of silence filled with disbelief. Did that really just happen? He asked, still processing what they had experienced. Another compelling account comes from Sarah, a college student who had heard about Resurrection Mary from friends before deciding to take a late-night drive for herself. As she drove slowly along Archer Avenue, she found herself absorbed by the hauntingly beautiful surroundings. Just as she passed by Resurrection Cemetery, she noticed a figure in white standing near the entrance. Intrigued and somewhat apprehensive, she pulled over to get a better look. When I first saw her, I thought she was just another girl waiting for a bus, Sarah reflects, but as I approached, I realized no bus stop was anywhere nearby. Like many others before her, Sarah felt drawn to stop. The woman's features were striking, delicate yet sorrowful, with an otherworldly glow about her skin that set her apart from ordinary passers-by. Sarah offered her a ride, and to her astonishment, the girl accepted without hesitation. They drove in silence for several minutes when Sarah felt compelled to ask where she needed to go. I'm trying to get home, the young woman finally replied softly, her voice almost like a distant whisper. Just as they crossed a small bridge near the cemetery, Sarah felt a sudden chill envelop the car. Turning to glance back at her passenger, she was met with empty space where the girl had been seated moments before, a swift disappearance that left her heart racing. These accounts of eerie encounters showcase not only the allure of Resurrection Mary but also the emotional weight carried by those who claim to have experienced her presence. Each story reflects a longing for connection and understanding, a poignant reminder that beneath legends lie human experiences tied to love and loss. Mark, another local witness, shares his experience during a late-night drive after dropping off his friends from a party. Alone on the road and feeling adventurous, he decided to test the urban legend for himself. He laughed off any trepidation until he happened upon Mary's familiar silhouette at the roadside. "She seemed so real when I first picked her up," Mark explains. "There was something about her sadness that made me want to talk to her." For several moments, they drove in silence as Mark attempted small talk. However, each question met with quietude deepened his sense of unease. It wasn't until they neared Resurrection Cemetery that he noticed her gaze shifting towards the window with an otherworldly intensity that in stark contrast to their earlier conversation. He suddenly sensed an unexplainable weight in the air. An oppressive silence settled around them. As he stole another glance toward his passenger's reflection in the rearview mirror, he realized she had vanished mid-sentence, leaving only coolness behind where warmth once lingered. Mark's heart pounded fiercely as he registered what had transpired, or replaced laughter in an instant. These accounts resonate through Archer Avenue like whispers carried by gentle winds, each driver weaving their memories into the fabric of Resurrection Mary's legend. The stories unfold not merely as ghostly encounters but rather echo sentiments deeply rooted in humanity, the desire to reach out across divides between life and death, finding meaning even amidst uncertainty. As we delve further into these accounts from those who encountered this ethereal being along Archer Avenue, they reveal something profound, that whether real or imagined, these experiences speak volumes about our search for connection even in realms beyond our understanding. With each retelling of these first-hand encounters with Resurrection Mary grows its legacy, a poignant reminder of how both fear and fascination compel us to explore paths shrouded in mystery. As the legend of Resurrection Mary unfolds, one of its most intriguing elements is the mysterious vanishing act that occurs as drivers approach Resurrection Cemetery. This phenomenon not only intensifies the enigma surrounding Mary but also serves as a defining moment in the stories of those who encounter her. The process is almost ritualistic in nature, occurring consistently and lending a palpable sense of suspense to every retelling. Imagine a quiet evening on Archer Avenue, where the air hangs heavy with anticipation. Drivers often find themselves engrossed in the atmosphere, the dimming light casting long shadows that stretch across the road, creating a mix of fear and fascination. As they approach the vicinity of Resurrection Cemetery, an unspoken understanding settles in. Something significant is about to happen. The common scenario begins with an unsuspecting driver catching sight of a young woman standing at the roadside, her white dress illuminated by the fading light. Many recount similar feelings of compulsion, an undeniable urge to stop and offer her a ride, as if drawn by an invisible thread connecting them to her ethereal presence. Time seems to shift in these moments, with everything around them fading away, leaving only this haunting figure and the decision to pull over. Once inside the vehicle, passengers often report an eerie calmness enveloping them. The atmosphere can turn noticeably cooler, contrasting starkly with the warmth of their earlier conversations. Drivers sometimes struggle for words, caught between curiosity and unease. As they travel further along Archer Avenue, the sensation of being caught between two realms becomes palpable, a feeling magnified by the closeness of Resurrection Cemetery just ahead. It is in this liminal space that the true mystique unfolds. As they approach the cemetery gates, drivers frequently steal glances at their passenger through the rearview mirror, only to be met with a face that defies description. Witnesses have described Mary as simultaneously beautiful and sorrowful. Her expression hints at untold stories and unresolved emotions, but just as quickly as she captures their attention, she disappears. The moment is jarring, electric and surreal, as if time itself hesitated before releasing its grip. One instant she is there, the next moment, she is gone without a trace. Drivers who have experienced this vanishing act often describe feeling an overwhelming chill wash over them when they realize she's no longer present. The silence in the car becomes deafening. It swallows conversations whole and replaces them with disbelief. For many, this sudden disappearance acts as both a conclusion and an invitation to ponder what lies beyond their own understanding of life and death. The fleeting nature of their encounter raises questions about Mary's existence. Who was she? Why does she still linger here? Was she searching for something left unfinished? Each story leaves behind a lingering sense of intrigue that compels others to seek their own encounters along Archer Avenue. The cemetery serves as not just a backdrop but also a significant player in this mysterious drama. Its wrought iron gates symbolize more than just a physical boundary. They represent a threshold between two worlds, the living and the dead, reality and folklore. For those who have witnessed Mary's vanishing act, crossing this threshold becomes an exploration into deeper existential themes, grief, longing for closure, and the mysteries that remain unresolved. Moreover, tales of her disappearance weave seamlessly into local lore, amplifying her legend among communities near Justice, Illinois. As people gather to share stories over coffee or during twilight gatherings, they recount their own brushes with Mary or listen intently to others' experiences, each retelling expanding upon her story while solidifying her place within cultural memory. Paranormal enthusiasts and thrill-seekers also flock to Archer Avenue, drawn by whispers of Mary's legend. They hope for first-hand experiences, an opportunity to witness what countless others have described as mystical encounters culminating at Resurrection Cemetery. In doing so, they become part of an ongoing chain linking past encounters with contemporary exploration, a collective search for understanding that transcends time itself. Ultimately, Resurrection Mary's vanishing act encapsulates more than mere superstition. It embodies profound human emotions tied intricately to our experiences of love and loss throughout life's journey. The intersection between life and death remains delicate, inviting us to confront our understanding while allowing our imaginations to roam freely through uncharted territories hidden within every shadow cast by flickering headlights on Archer Avenue. In each ghostly ride taken down this fabled stretch of road lies an opportunity, not only for confrontation with fear but also for connection with something greater than ourselves, a reminder that even within uncertainty dwells profound meaning waiting patiently to be unveiled amidst desires lost along endless journeys. To truly understand the haunting legend of Resurrection Mary, it is vital to delve into the historical context surrounding Resurrection Cemetery and its significance to the local community in Justice, Illinois. The cemetery is not merely a graveyard, it is a rich tapestry woven with stories of those who came before, each contributing to the enigmatic aura enveloping the area today. Established in the early 20th century, Resurrection Cemetery has long served as a solemn resting place for many individuals. Originally founded to accommodate the growing Catholic population in Chicago's southwest side, it quickly became a vital component of local heritage. As families laid their loved ones to rest within its wrought iron gates, the cemetery grew, both in terms of its physical size and the collective memories encapsulated within its bounds. The grounds are adorned with elaborate monuments and headstones that reflect various eras in architectural design, showcasing an array of cultural influences. Many markers hint at stories of immigrants who sought a better life in America, weaving their legacies into the very fabric of the community. For generations, locals have visited these graves, maintaining connections with their past while honoring those whose lives shaped their present. Yet, it is not just the physical history that imbues Resurrection Cemetery with significance. It is also the emotional weight carried by these burial sites. As families grapple with loss, the cemetery has become a sanctuary for grief and remembrance, a place where mourning intertwines with celebration of life. In this environment, the boundaries between the living and those departed feel acutely palpable. This atmosphere undoubtedly set the stage for the emergence of local legends, including that of Resurrection Mary. While specifics about her origins remain murky, many accounts suggest she was a young woman who tragically lost her life while returning home from a dance in the nearby area, an event many believe took place during the 1930s. This narrative resonates deeply within the community, It symbolizes unfulfilled promises and emotions lingering beyond death. The dance hall, once bustling with laughter, now stands empty, its echoes replaced by whispers carried on darkened streets leading directly to Resurrection Cemetery. As tales of Mary's ghostly appearances began circulating among residents and visitors alike. They intertwined seamlessly with historical recollections of love and loss tied to local traditions. It was common for young couples to meet along Archer Avenue on their way to social events held nearby, a rite of passage that connects generations through shared experiences. Each sighting of Mary seems to beckon these traditions back to life. She embodies sentimentality and longing while reminding us all that life's fleeting moments are often tinged with bittersweet nostalgia. As people began sharing stories about Mary's spectral visits and her silent pleas for rides home, they contributed to a broader narrative about connection, both to one another and to those who have passed away. This collective storytelling not only nurtures community bonds but also nourishes cultural memory. Mary becomes a bridge linking past traumas with present understandings of love, grief, and desire for closure. Resurrection Cemetery also functions as a significant landmark anchoring these tales within geographical context. Locals frequently visit both the cemetery and Archer Avenue while sharing stories about Mary's encounters, a pilgrimage that reinforces communal ties as they traverse spaces rich in historical resonance. The act of driving down this road becomes more than just a journey. It transforms into an exploration steeped in meaning where every bend recalls memories etched into local consciousness. In addition to its role within individual narratives, Resurrection Cemetery has sparked interest among paranormal enthusiasts eager to uncover truths surrounding its legends. Ghost hunters armed with cameras and equipment flock to Archer Avenue seeking tangible evidence, hoping to capture glimpses of Mary or any sign that could illuminate her history further. Curiosity often leads them into deeper inquiries about the cemetery's past. They uncover forgotten histories intermingled with contemporary tales, each visit adding another layer to the rich tapestry of experiences found therein. Ultimately, Resurrection Cemetery stands not only as a resting place for those departed but emerges as a symbol of memory itself, an evolving narrative entwined with community identity through shared stories reverberating across generations. The allure surrounding Resurrection Mary becomes emblematic of our human desire for connection even amidst loss. She serves as a reminder that while time may separate us from those we've loved deeply, they remain forever intertwined within our collective memory, a testament to love's enduring power both in life and death. Thus, we find ourselves drawn back time and again down Archer Avenue, not merely searching for a ghostly encounter, but rather seeking connection across time's fragile veil, echoes resonating within every heartbeat guiding us towards understanding amidst sorrow and joy alike. The legend of Resurrection Mary has woven itself intricately into the fabric of local folklore in Justice, Illinois, impacting both tourism and the cultural landscape of the area. As a story that blends elements of tragedy, mystery, and the supernatural, Mary's tale captures the imagination of residents and visitors alike. This phenomenon demonstrates how folklore can foster a sense of identity within a community while simultaneously driving interest from outsiders. One of the most significant impacts of the Resurrection Mary legend is its role in drawing tourists to Archer Avenue and Resurrection Cemetery. The ghostly figure in white has become synonymous with nighttime explorations and ghost tours that highlight various local legends. Visitors eager for an encounter with the mysterious spirit often find themselves roaming along this haunted road, hoping to catch a glimpse of Mary or share in the eerie atmosphere that envelopes her story. Local businesses have capitalized on this interest by offering guided tours, merchandise inspired by Mary's tale, and themed events designed to immerse guests in the legend. This influx of tourists has rejuvenated the local economy while fostering a sense of pride among residents who view this legend as a unique aspect of their cultural heritage. Shops and restaurants near Archer Avenue have adapted their offerings to cater to these visitors, menus featuring ghost-themed food items or merchandise celebrating local lore have emerged as popular attractions. Festivals celebrating folklore and Halloween events feature Resurrection Mary prominently, further solidifying her place within community traditions. Moreover, the story transcends mere tourist attraction. It enhances local culture by providing opportunities for storytelling and communal bonding. Residents share tales around bonfires or during community gatherings, each recounting adding layers to Mary's narrative while reinforcing connections among neighbors. These shared experiences create a collective memory that strengthens community identity, making residents stewards of their own folklore. As Mary's legend continues to evolve through these retellings, it mirrors broader societal themes. Questions about life after death, unfulfilled desires, and unresolved grief resonate deeply within human experience. Her story speaks not just to those seeking thrills but also serves as an emotional outlet for individuals grappling with loss or longing for closure. This duality allows both locals and visitors alike to find personal significance within what might initially seem like a simple ghost story. In addition to its economic impact and nurturing communal ties, Resurrection Mary's tale has sparked interest among researchers and enthusiasts delving into urban legends and folklore studies. Scholars consider such stories critical components of cultural narratives that reflect prevailing social attitudes over time, often blending historical truths with sensational embellishments. The examination of how stories like Mary's evolve can shed light on our society's changing perceptions surrounding death, love, and memory. Interestingly enough, as modern technology propels us toward digital storytelling formats, social media platforms amplify discussions around urban legends. Countless blogs document supposed encounters with Resurrection Mary while encouraging others to share their experiences online. These digital exchanges create broader awareness beyond geographical boundaries. Sharing snapshots or videos capturing eerie moments encourages further intrigue surrounding her legend on an international scale. As visitors flock to experience Archer Avenue's haunting ambience firsthand or search for evidence affirming Mary's existence through photographs taken at dusk, the delicate balance between belief and skepticism plays out time after time along this path shrouded in mystery. Each new sighting adds fresh layers that enrich local lore while simultaneously perpetuating ongoing interest. It becomes essential for individuals exploring these roads not merely grasping at supernatural encounters but rather engaging deeply with something far more profound, a connection across generations embracing beauty found amid fragility woven throughout life itself. Ultimately, Resurrection Mary's impact reaches far beyond being just a ghostly figure haunting Archer Avenue. She stands as an emblematic representation illustrating how powerful folklore can shape community identity while evoking universal themes pertinent across cultures worldwide. As legends continue unfolding alongside traditional tales passed down over generations, they resonate unwaveringly across landscapes illuminated by flickering headlights searching earnestly amidst shadows cast upon forgotten roads. As interest in the legend of Resurrection Mary has grown, so too have attempts by paranormal investigators and amateur ghost hunters to uncover the truth behind the sightings. Fueled by a combination of curiosity and skepticism, these seekers venture into the haunting realms of Archer Avenue and Resurrection Cemetery, hoping to capture evidence of Mary's ethereal presence while navigating the fine line between belief and skepticism. Paranormal investigation groups frequently undertake trips to Archer Avenue, armed with various tools designed to detect signs of supernatural activity. EMF meters, spirit boxes, and night vision cameras have become their standard equipment as they strive to document any unusual phenomena. Some groups collaborate with local historians to deepen their understanding of the area's past, believing that historical context may provide insights into Mary's lingering spirit. One notable investigation took place during a particularly foggy autumn evening when a team of seasoned ghost hunters set out to explore the cemetery and its surroundings. As they parked near the entrance, a palpable sense of anticipation filled the air. The team set up cameras at strategic locations along Archer Avenue, eager to capture footage of any spectral activity while recounting the legend that had drawn them there in the first place. As night descended, they used a spirit box, a device that scans radio frequencies, to attempt communication with any lingering spirits. The rapid static was soon punctuated by disembodied voices that seemed to emerge from thin air, some claiming to hear whispers that sounded eerily close to Mary. Each transmission invigorated their hopes of making contact with the ghostly figure who had captivated countless others. However, despite hours spent in earnest investigation, definitive evidence remained elusive. Many team members reported feelings of unease or being watched, but physical proof, photos or recordings, proved difficult to obtain. These mixed results fostered ongoing discussions about belief and skepticism, while some members felt validated by emotional responses and inexplicable sensations, others returned home without tangible proof of their experiences. Similarly, amateur ghost hunting enthusiasts often gather in small groups for casual explorations down Archer Avenue. These outings typically begin with shared stories around a campfire or in a nearby diner where patrons swap personal accounts of encounters with Resurrection Mary. Fueled by excitement and camaraderie, they venture out into the darkness, armed with cell phones and flashlights instead of professional-grade equipment. During one such outing, a group of young thrill-seekers decided to test their courage by attempting to summon Mary's presence. As they navigated Archer Avenue under the glow of moonlight, found themselves drawn toward Resurrection Cemetery, its silhouette looming ahead as an undeniable focal point for their exploration. They took turns sharing urban legends while capturing photos on their smartphones. Laughter filled the night air until nervousness began creeping in upon reaching the cemetery gates. In an attempt to invoke Mary's spirit, one member suggested they call out her name, a decision met with both enthusiasm and apprehension. As they chanted, "Resurrection Mary," into the stillness, moments later seemed to stretch indefinitely. Just then, a sudden rustle emerged from nearby bushes, a sound prompting gasps throughout the group. A raccoon scuttled away into darkness as hearts raced again amidst nervous laughter. It had been nothing more than an ordinary animal. Such experiences encapsulate a recurring theme among those who seek out encounters with Resurrection Mary. While many may arrive hoping for tangible evidence, what they often leave with instead are emotions stirred by shared adventure and camaraderie forged through confronting fears together. These communal investigations transform into bonding experiences, strengthening friendships while fueling conversations tied closely back into local folklore. In another vein, some dedicated paranormal researchers have turned towards technology in hopes of leveraging modern advancements to reveal truths hidden within long-standing legends like that of Resurrection Mary. Live streaming platforms allow individuals not only to share their ghost hunting endeavors but also engage audiences worldwide, inviting viewers along for every hair-raising moment experienced on site. Social media provides a forum where individuals recount tales from their investigations or share evidence supposedly captured during stays along Archer Avenue. Interestingly enough, while many investigations yield little more than shared narratives exchanged among peers, it is this very act of storytelling that breathes life back into legends while creating new connections across generations steeped within these existing tales. Each account enriches Mary's legacy further, blending folklore with lived experiences allows communities surrounding justice not only reaffirm ties tied together through shared values, but also fosters curiosity, encouraging others outside circles wanting in, a testament showcasing folklore's ability to transcend finite boundaries. Ultimately, whether through organized expeditions or casual outings down this fabled path, each encounter underscores an important truth. Those who chase shadows do far more than merely seek specters, they embark upon meaningful journeys, uniting past with present while illuminating connections woven throughout lives lived deeply imbued amidst mysteries waiting patiently just beyond sight. The legend of Resurrection Mary, like many ghost stories, invites a range of psychological interpretations that can help explain why individuals perceive such ghostly encounters along Archer Avenue. At the intersection of folklore and psychology lies the concept of collective memory, which plays a pivotal role in shaping how people experience and interpret these supernatural phenomena. Collective memory refers to the shared pool of knowledge and recollections held by a group of people, often influenced by cultural narratives and communal experiences. In the case of Resurrection Mary, the legend has been passed down through generations, embedding itself in the local consciousness. As residents and visitors recount their experiences, they draw on this shared memory, reinforcing the details of the story and creating a strong foundation for belief in her existence. This interplay between individual perception and collective narrative can lead to heightened expectations when driving down Archer Avenue, an expectation that something extraordinary may occur. In psychological terms, the phenomenon of suggestion can significantly impact how people experience ghostly encounters. When individuals are primed with stories about Resurrection Mary, their minds become more receptive to interpreting ambiguous stimuli as supernatural. For example, a rustle in the bushes or a fleeting shadow can evoke feelings of dread or excitement, leading them to believe they have encountered something otherworldly. This is especially true in environments laden with historical significance and emotional weight, such as Archer Avenue and Resurrection Cemetery. The atmosphere can amplify feelings of anticipation and fear, making individuals more likely to interpret ordinary events as paranormal. Moreover, the power of social influence cannot be underestimated. When groups gather to share tales of ghostly encounters, their collective energy can create an atmosphere ripe for suggestion. If one person claims to have seen Mary, others may become more attuned to their surroundings in hopes of experiencing something similar. This psychological phenomenon is known as social contagion, the way emotions and behaviors can spread among individuals within a group. As excitement builds during these storytelling sessions, it becomes easier for participants to project their own thoughts and feelings onto their experiences, leading to potentially altered perceptions of reality. The interplay between personal beliefs and environmental factors also plays a crucial role in shaping individuals' experiences on Archer Avenue. Those who approach the area with skepticism may report feeling less compelled by the legend, while those who believe in the possibility of Mary's existence may experience heightened emotions or sensations. This highlights the psychological aspect of belief. Our expectations can significantly influence our perceptions. The mind often seeks to confirm what it already believes, leading individuals to interpret events in ways that align with their preconceived notions about the supernatural. Additionally, themes of love, loss, and unresolved grief resonate deeply within human experience. Resurrection Mary embodies these universal themes. Her story serves as a poignant reminder of longing and unfulfilled wishes. People may be drawn to her legend not only out of curiosity but also due to their own personal experiences with loss or heartbreak. In this context, encountering Mary becomes an opportunity for reflection, a chance to confront feelings that may be difficult to articulate otherwise. This emotional resonance adds depth to the legend, allowing it to connect meaningfully with those who seek her presence. Furthermore, the act of storytelling itself has therapeutic qualities that can contribute to perceived encounters with the supernatural. Sharing experiences related to Mary fosters a sense of community and belonging among individuals engaged in these narratives. By recounting their own brushes with the ghostly figure, participants allow themselves to process their emotions surrounding love and loss within a supportive environment. This communal sharing can validate personal experiences while simultaneously reinforcing the legend's significance within local culture. As investigators and enthusiasts continue exploring the legend through various means, be it ghost hunting or casual storytelling, the psychological implications remain ever present. Each account morphs into a part of the larger narrative woven around Resurrection Mary, further embedding her story within the collective memory of justice. Illinois, The blending of folklore with individual interpretation ensures that her legacy continues to thrive while inviting new generations to engage with themes that transcend time and space. Ultimately, understanding the psychological dimensions of perceived ghostly encounters on Archer Avenue reveals profound insights into human nature, the ways in which we construct meaning from our experiences, through belief, suggestion, emotion, and shared narratives, highlight our innate desire for connection amid life's mysteries. Seeking out Resurrection Mary. Along this fabled road, individuals embark on journeys that traverse not only physical landscapes but also the intricate realms of memory and emotion, where shadows cast by history intertwine with aspirations for understanding. The legend of Resurrection Mary is not only a captivating ghost story but also a profound reflection of cultural themes that resonate deeply within the human experience. At its core, Mary's tale embodies the universal struggles with loss, longing, and the unresolved tension between life and death, emotions that connect individuals across generations and communities. In many ways, Resurrection Mary serves as an archetype for the lost souls that populate folklore around the world. Her tragic narrative of a young woman who met an untimely end resonates with the collective consciousness, reflecting society's enduring fascination with those who have departed yet linger in memories. This fascination speaks to our innate fear of loss and the desire to maintain connections with those we have loved and lost. It serves as a reminder that even in death, bonds can remain unbroken. The themes of loss and longing are manifested in various ways within Mary's story. For drivers traversing Archer Avenue, the act of picking up this spectral figure becomes symbolic, a longing for companionship or a connection to something greater. Many who report encounters with Mary describe feelings of sorrow as they witness her ethereal beauty juxtaposed against her apparent sadness. This emotional weight often leads to contemplation about their own relationships or unresolved issues with loved ones who may no longer be present in their lives. The legend provides a conduit for individuals to process their grief and reflect on what it means to live amidst lingering attachments. Additionally, Mary's persistent attempts to return home highlight our cultural preoccupation with unfinished business. The idea that some souls may be bound by earthly ties due to regrets or unfulfilled desires. This theme resonates widely. Stories of restless spirits seeking closure appear in countless cultures and serve as cautionary tales urging individuals to address their own emotional baggage. In Resurrection Mary's case, she becomes emblematic of those whose lives were cut short before they could fulfill their aspirations, forcing us to confront the fragility of life and the importance of emotional resolution before it's too late. Moreover, Resurrection Mary embodies the unresolved tension between life and death, an ongoing dialogue reflected in cultural narratives across time. Her spectral appearances raise questions about what happens after we die. Are we truly gone? Do we linger on earth as shadows of our former selves? Such inquiries compel individuals to explore personal beliefs surrounding mortality, spirituality, and existential purpose. In contemplating Mary's fate, people are invited into deeper dialogues about their fears and hopes regarding their own afterlives. Culturally, the legend has evolved into a vehicle for communal bonding and storytelling that fosters collective memory. As residents share tales of encounters with Mary around dinner tables or during local gatherings, they reinforce societal norms surrounding love, loss, and remembrance. These narratives offer opportunities for shared grief, allowing community members to articulate feelings associated with mortality while simultaneously preserving an important part of local heritage. Furthermore, Resurrection Mary reminds us of the role folklore plays in shaping cultural identity and preserving history. By engaging with her story through oral tradition and investigation, communities maintain connections not only to their past but also to one another. Each retelling adds depth to Mary's character while allowing for individual interpretations that reflect contemporary experiences, making her story ever-evolving while still rooted in its historical context. The impact extends beyond local storytelling. Mary's legend has attracted scholars interested in understanding how such myths mirror our cultural psyche. By examining urban legends like hers, researchers uncover patterns related to collective memory formation and emotional expression tied intricately into societal values over time. These investigations provide insights into how communities navigate grief through storytelling practices as they grapple with mortality within culturally relevant frameworks. In an age where increasing technological advancements allow broader access to stories, whether through social media or digital archives, the allure surrounding Resurrection Mary continues unabated across geographical boundaries. As countless individuals engage online discussing encounters or sharing experiences related to her mythos, they become partakers in a larger conversation transcending time and space, a testament showcasing how deeply ingrained these themes are within human experience. Ultimately, Resurrection Mary stands as more than just an urban legend. She encapsulates profound cultural themes surrounding loss, longing, and the interplay between life and death. Through her story we find ourselves grappling not only with respect toward those who've departed but also embracing invaluable lessons about connection amid fleeting moments, the delicate threads woven together illuminating all lives touched by both joy and sorrow equally. In conclusion, the enduring legend of Resurrection Mary encapsulates much more than just a ghost story. It weaves a complex tapestry of cultural themes, psychological interpretations, and shared human experiences. As this narrative unfurls along Archer Avenue near Resurrection Cemetery, it continually invites curiosity and speculation, enriching local lore and highlighting the significance of our shared memories and desires. At its core, the tale of Resurrection Mary reflects humanity's age-old grappling with concepts of loss and longing. Her spectral figure, appearing as a silent young woman in a white dress, serves as a poignant reminder of the unresolved feelings associated with loved ones who have passed. Many who traverse these roads are not merely seeking an encounter with the supernatural, they are engaging with their own emotions tied to love, hurt, and unanswered questions about closure. This connection fosters a sense of community among those who share their experiences, allowing them to bond over their common reflections on mortality and the afterlife. Moreover, Mary's legend highlights how folklore adaptively serves cultural functions by framing collective memories in narratives that resonate deeply with individuals from diverse backgrounds. The very act of recounting her story allows people to navigate their grief while also preserving an important part of local history. Through storytelling, communities affirm their identities and reaffirm communal ties as they confront shared truths about life, death, and everything in between. The multifaceted nature of Resurrection Mary's legend underscores another critical aspect: the human tendency to seek out mysteries that may remain unsolved. Ghost stories often provoke more questions than answers, leaving room for interpretations that evolve alongside the lives of those engaged with them. In many ways, it is the ambiguities within these narratives that compel individuals to explore deeper themes related to existence and transcendence. Are we destined to linger in a world similar to Mary's until our unfinished business is resolved? These perennial inquiries keep the legend alive and relevant across generations, prompting ongoing exploration into realms both tangible and ethereal. Paranormal investigators and enthusiasts alike contribute to this unfolding mystery by seeking evidence and engaging with the legend on various levels. These attempts further enrich the narrative, sometimes yielding concrete findings but often resulting in shared experiences that deepen emotional connections among participants. While some may return home empty-handed in terms of physical proof, they gain invaluable encounters enhancing their understanding of loss and connection. Each person's journey through the haunting night on Archer Avenue adds another layer to Mary's evolving story. Additionally, with increased access to technology and social media, discussions surrounding Resurrection Mary extend beyond geographical boundaries. Online forums allow individuals worldwide to engage with her legend, share personal encounters or varying interpretations while inviting new audiences to reflect on their emotional landscapes and historical contexts. In doing so, they contribute a fresh perspective to long-standing tales about love, yearning, and eternal questions regarding human connection. As the narrative surrounding Resurrection Mary continues to flourish within contemporary society, one cannot help but acknowledge the resonance it holds. Within our collective psyche, emblems of loss persistently haunt us, reminders of fragility intertwined with revered memories echoing throughout time. While we may yearn for definitive answers about life beyond death or seek finality to unresolved issues with loved ones lost, sometimes the beauty lies within embracing ambiguity itself. In essence, the enduring nature of Resurrection Mary proves that some mysteries may be meant to remain unsolved, a space left for interpretation where imagination meets memory. It invites us all on a journey not merely through haunted roads but directly into the intricate tapestry illustrating universal experiences echoed within both joy and sorrow alike, a testament showcasing how folklore can arise from our deepest desires for understanding even amid unanswerable questions. Perhaps it is here we find solace, within the stories that continue unfolding long after headlights fade along Archer Avenue, a reminder that we remain forever connected through threads woven by empathy, the very essence propelling us towards exploration amid life's ephemeral moments. The Skeptic and the Believer. Sarah Walker traced a finger down the faded newspaper clipping, her brow furrowed in concentration. The grainy black and white photograph showed a stretch of Epping Forest, indistinguishable from any other, except for the stark headline screaming about a body discovered near Hangman's Hill. She'd spent the better part of the afternoon lost in the archives of the local library, sifting through decades of reports, missing persons, unsolved murders, alleged suicides. Each one added another layer of darkness to the already ominous reputation of the woods. 5 murders in the last 20 years, all within a 5-mile radius, she muttered, more to herself than to the empty room. And that's just the ones they found. She tapped the screen of her laptop, bringing up a map of Epping Forest. Red markers littered the area, each one painstakingly placed to represent a documented incident. The sheer density of them was unsettling, even to her skeptical mind. Sarah wasn't one to believe in ghosts or ghouls, but she believed in statistics, and the statistics surrounding Epping Forest were undeniably grim. A sudden crash from the other room startled her. "Mark, what was that?" she called out, her voice laced with a hint of irritation. "Almost ready," Mark yelled back, his voice muffled by what sounded like an avalanche of equipment. "Just getting the infrared camera set up. You wouldn't believe how sensitive this thing is." Sarah sighed and closed her laptop, pushing away from the cluttered desk. Mark Olson, her best friend and the antithesis of everything she stood for, was in full paranormal investigator mode. While Sarah sought logical explanations, Mark embraced the possibility of the supernatural with an almost childlike enthusiasm. It was a dynamic that often led to spirited debates, but it was also what made their friendship so enduring. She found him in the living room, surrounded by a chaotic array of cameras, tripods, and wires. He was fiddling with a bulky camera that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. "Seriously, Mark?" Sarah said, raising an eyebrow. "You look like you're about to film a documentary about alien invasions, not a nighttime hike in the woods." Mark grinned, unfazed by her skepticism. "Gotta be prepared, Sarah. You never know what we might find. I've even got a spirit box that IT scans radio frequencies to try and pick up paranormal communications." "A spirit box," Sarah repeated flatly. "Right, because disembodied spirits communicate through static." "Hey, you never know," Mark insisted, adjusting the settings on the camera. "Besides, even if we don't find any ghosts, think of the amazing night photography we can get. The forest at night is supposed to be incredible." Sarah crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe. That's assuming we don't get lost and become another statistic in my collection of depressing newspaper clippings. Relax, I've got a GPS, Mark said, waving a small device in the air. And I've downloaded a map of the trails that will be fine. Famous last words, Sarah muttered. Come on, Sarah, where's your sense of adventure? Mark asked, his voice laced with mock disappointment. Aren't you even a little bit curious? Sarah hesitated. She hated to admit it, but the forest held a dark allure, a magnetic pull that she couldn't quite explain. The rational part of her dismissed it as morbid curiosity, but a small, hidden part of her wondered if there was more to the stories than just folklore and urban legends. Curious about the power of suggestion and mass hysteria, maybe, she conceded. I'm betting that any paranormal activity people experience is just their minds playing tricks on them, amplified by the creepy atmosphere. Okay, so prove it, Mark challenged, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Come with me tonight and debunk the myths, show me that it's all just in people's heads. That's the plan, Sarah said, a hint of determination in her voice. I intend to find a logical explanation for every bump in the night, every unexplained sound, every ghostly apparition. And what if you can't? Mark asked, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. What if you actually see something you can't explain? Sarah paused, considering the possibility that it was a scenario she refused to entertain, but the thought lingered in the back of her mind, a tiny seed of doubt planted in the fertile ground of her skepticism. Then, she said, meeting Mark's gaze with unwavering conviction, I'll find a way to explain it. There's always a rational explanation, Mark, always. Mark grinned, clearly enjoying her stubbornness. We'll see about that, he said. We'll see. As dusk began to settle, casting long shadows across the room, they packed their bags. Mark double-checked his equipment, making sure every camera and sensor was functioning properly. Sarah, on the other hand, grabbed a flashlight, a first aid kit, and a multi-tool, practicality versus possibility, logic versus belief. The stage was set for their exploration into the heart of Epping Forest. Ready to bust some ghosts? Mark asked, slinging his camera bag over his shoulder. Sarah smirked. Ready to prove there's no such thing. With a final glance at each other, they stepped out into the twilight, the haunted woods of Epping Forest awaiting them in the darkness beyond, shadows of the ancient wood. Shadows stretched long and distorted under the sickly yellow glow of their flashlights, mimicking grotesque figures that danced just beyond the pool of light. Sarah consulted the topographical map on her phone, its screen reflecting in her wide eyes. Okay, Mark, according to this, we're approaching Hangman's Hill. Charming name, isn't it? Mark, ever the eager believer, shivered dramatically. Don't joke, Sarah, this place, it's soaked in history, dark history. And soaked it was, not just in history, but in a persistent dampness that seemed to cling to everything, seeping into their clothes and chilling them to the bone. Sarah pulled her jacket tighter. Soaked in rain, you mean, though I'll admit, the stories are pretty grim. She launched into a recitation, her voice echoing eerily in the stillness. Supposedly, this was a common execution site for centuries, highwaymen, poachers, witches, anyone the local lord deemed inconvenient. Legend says their screams still echo on moonless nights, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Remember the Boudiccan revolt? They say the Romans chased the icy night warriors right through here, slaughtering them en masse. Imagine the bloodshed that stained this very ground. As she spoke, images flashed through her mind, fragments gleaned from her research. A Roman legionary, his gladius dripping red. A hooded figure, raising a dagger under the pale light of a waning moon. A terrified poacher, struggling against the hangman's noose. Epping Forest wasn't just a collection of trees, it was a repository of suffering. Mark, visibly captivated, brandished his EMF reader. And what about the more recent stuff? The unsolved murders, the occult rituals. This forest has seen it all. Sarah, the veil between worlds is thin here. The device flickered erratically, though Sarah suspected it was more due to the cheap electronics than any supernatural activity. Sensationalized newspaper articles and amateur ghost hunters, mostly, Sarah countered, but even she couldn't completely dismiss the weight of the forest's past. But yes, she conceded, there's definitely a vibe. A palpable sense of unease. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of decaying leaves and damp earth. A twig snapped nearby, and both of them jumped. It was probably just a squirrel, Sarah reasoned, but the sound seemed amplified in the oppressive silence, a sharp punctuation mark in the forest's long, dark narrative. Miles away, on the forest's southern fringe, Detective Inspector Eleanor Davies stood at the edge of a muddy clearing. The beam of her flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating a weathered police cordon tape, still clinging precariously to a gnarled oak. 5 years since Emily Carter had vanished without a trace. Davies hadn't been the lead investigator on the case, but the disappearance had burrowed its way under her skin, a constant, nagging reminder of the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface of the ordinary. Emily had been a vibrant, promising young artist, known for her intricate charcoal drawings of the forest. She'd come here often, seeking inspiration in the ancient trees and dappled sunlight. Then, one day, she was simply gone. Davies shivered, not entirely from the cold. The official explanation was abduction, possibly murder, but they'd never found a body, never found a single piece of concrete evidence to tie anyone to the crime. The case had gone cold, another unsolved mystery swallowed by the vast, indifferent wilderness. She ran a gloved hand over the rough bark of the oak, picturing Emily, sketching in her notebook, oblivious to the danger that stalked her. Davies had spent countless hours in this forest, retracing Emily's steps, searching for any clue, any sign. She knew every twist and turn of the trails, every hidden hollow and overgrown thicket, and yet, the forest remained a mystery, a silent accomplice to Emily's disappearance. A rustling in the undergrowth startled her. She spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the Glock holstered at her hip. A deer emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing momentarily in the flashlight beam before it vanished back into the darkness. Davies exhaled slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. It was just a deer, but in this forest, nothing ever felt quite that simple. She often felt as if the trees themselves were watching her, listening, holding their breath, waiting for something, waiting for her to leave. She cast one last look at the clearing, at the tattered remnants of the police tape, a stark reminder of the case that haunted her waking hours. Then, she turned and walked back towards her car, the darkness closing in around her like a suffocating shroud. The forest held its secrets close, and Davies knew, with a chilling certainty, that some secrets were never meant to be unearthed. Into the gloaming. Ready to earn your skeptic badge? Mark asked, a grin splitting his face as they stepped off the narrow road and onto the leaf-strewn path. The last sliver of sun dipped below the tree-line, painting the sky in bruised hues of purple and orange. Sarah adjusted the strap of her backpack, a wry smile playing on her lips. I'm always ready, Mark, though I suspect the only thing I'll be earning tonight is a bad case of mosquito bites. He chuckled, pulling a small, high-powered flashlight from his own pack. Its beam cut through the deepening gloom, illuminating the gnarled roots snaking across the path. Pessimist. Where's your sense of adventure? Tonight, we're walking in the footsteps of history, and maybe something a little less earthly. Sarah rolled her eyes, but a flicker of anticipation sparked within her nonetheless. She loved the forest, loved the feeling of being swallowed by its ancient presence. Even if she didn't believe in ghosts, there was something undeniably potent about this place. So, what are your predictions? She asked, falling into step beside him. Mark bounced the flashlight beam around, catching the glint of dew on spiderweb strung between branches. Tonight, I'm hoping for a Class A haunting, maybe a disembodied voice, a visible apparition, a significant EMF spike, something undeniable, something that will make even you a believer, Sarah Walker. And what am I predicting? She countered, her voice laced with amusement, probably a lot of creaking branches, some rustling leaves, maybe an owl hooting dramatically, all perfectly explainable by natural causes. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of the nearby road fading as they plunged deeper into the woods. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The trees, once bathed in the golden light of sunset, now stood like silent sentinels, their branches clawing at the twilight sky. Mark stopped abruptly, holding up a hand. Listen. Sarah strained her ears. At first, she heard nothing but the faint whisper of the wind through the trees. Then, a different sound emerged, a soft, almost imperceptible rustling in the undergrowth. Probably just a rabbit, she said, trying to sound nonchalant, though her pulse had quickened slightly. Mark shook his head. Too big, and too quiet. A rabbit would be making a lot more noise. He directed the flashlight beam into the dense thicket, but saw nothing. They continued on, the silence now heavier, more oppressive. The forest seemed to be holding its breath, waiting. Even the birds had stopped singing. Okay, Sarah admitted, her voice a little tighter than before. That is unsettling. Mark grinned. Told you, this is prime haunting territory. He flipped on his EMF reader, the small screen glowing green in the darkness. The needle remained steady, indicating normal levels. Nothing yet, he said, his voice betraying a hint of disappointment. They walked further, the path winding deeper into the heart of the forest. The trees grew taller, their branches intertwining to form a dense canopy that blocked out what little light remained. The air grew colder, a damp chill that seeped into their bones. Sarah shivered, pulling her jacket tighter. Around her, the initial tranquility she had felt upon entering the forest had vanished, replaced by a growing sense of unease. That it wasn't just the darkness, or the silence. That it was something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. A feeling of being watched, of being unwelcome. She glanced at Mark, but he seemed oblivious, his attention focused on the EMF reader. His face was illuminated by the green glow, his eyes wide with anticipation. That he was in his element, completely absorbed by the possibility of encountering something extraordinary. Sarah, on the other hand, was starting to feel distinctly uneasy. The rational part of her brain was desperately searching for a logical explanation for the oppressive atmosphere, but the primal part of her was screaming at her to turn back, to escape the suffocating darkness. Suddenly, a twig snapped behind them. Sarah whirled around, her heart leaping into her throat. She scanned the darkness, her eyes straining to pierce the gloom. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling slightly. Only silence answered. Mark turned around, his eyes narrowing. "Did you hear something?" Sarah nodded, her breath catching in her throat. "Yes, something, behind us." He raised the flashlight, sweeping the beam through the trees. Again, nothing, probably just an animal, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. They stood there for a moment, frozen in place, listening intently. The only sound was the faint whisper of the wind through the trees, and the frantic beating of Sarah's heart. Let's keep moving," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They started walking again, their pace quickening. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees looming like shadowy figures. The silence grew even more profound, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the leaves and the sound of their ragged breathing. As they walked, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. She kept glancing over her shoulder, her eyes darting nervously through the darkness, but each time, she saw nothing. The EMF reader in Mark's hand flickered, the green light suddenly turning amber. He stopped dead in his tracks. "What is it?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with fear. Mark stared at the EMF reader, his eyes wide with disbelief. It's spiking, and it's coming from over there." He pointed into the deepest, darkest part of the forest, where the trees seemed to merge into a single, impenetrable mass, whispers on the wind. The EMF reader's crimson light throbbed erratically, flinging grotesque shadows across the intertwined branches above. A shiver traced Sarah's spine, and she cinched her jacket tighter. Right, that's noteworthy, she admitted, her tone strained, her gaze flicked to the digital thermometer clipped to her pack. And now there's this. Mark practically vibrated with barely contained enthusiasm. Noteworthy, Sarah, that thing's pegged. What's the temperature reading? Sarah brandished the device, a crease forming between her brows. It's plunged 10 degrees in a minute. That's atypical, even deep in the woods at night. The air had turned frigid, a sharp cold that gnawed at her bones despite her layers. She recalibrated the device, checking the battery. Nope, it's operating as it should. Already, Mark was fussing with his audio recorder, a compact, professional model he swore by. Temperature anomalies are textbook, Sarah, this is the real deal. He raised the recorder, aiming it towards the dense undergrowth where the EMF had surged. Come on, spirit entity, make yourself known. She rolled her eyes, but a prickle of disquiet crawled down her back. 10 degrees was far outside the norm. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Mark, there are other explanations. She directed her flashlight into the trees. The beam sliced through the impenetrable dark. The trunks seemed to draw closer, their boughs like bony arms extended in supplication. Then, it reached her ears. A faint rustling, almost imperceptible over the soughing leaves. It resembled voices. Did you catch that? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Mark lowered the recorder slightly, tilting his head. Catch what? Just the wind, I think. Negative, Sarah insisted, straining. Voces, subdued, but absolutely voices. She advanced a few steps, attempting to pinpoint the origin. The sounds seemed to eddy around her, emanating from all sides. They were muffled, incoherent, like a choir speaking an unknown language. It was as if the forest itself was sharing secrets. Mark frowned. I'm not hearing anything. Are you certain you're not imagining it? Sarah shook her head, her pulse quickening. She was a scientist, a skeptic. She didn't credit ghosts or apparitions, but the cold, the EMF spike, and now the disembodied voices. Her rationalism was beginning to erode. She shut her eyes, honing in on the sound. The voices intensified momentarily, then waned, like the ebb and flow of the ocean. Listen, she pressed, grasping Mark's arm. Just listen closely. He focused, his skepticism giving way to cautious curiosity. Okay, he conceded slowly. I think I detect something, barely there, like utterances. He tweaked the recorder, pushing up the gain. Blast, still can't decipher it, just static and murmurs. The voices swelled, enveloping them in a vortex. Sarah felt a sudden disorientation, a dizzying sensation that caused her to falter. The temperature plummeted further, even biting than before. She saw her breath puffing out into the night. This is unnatural, Mark, she observed, her voice betraying a tremor. This goes beyond my sphere of experience. Mark, however, was practically enraptured. His eyes glittered with fervor. This is it, Sarah, vindication, we're actually capturing paranormal phenomena. He clutched the recorder, his fingers dancing over the controls. Communicate with us, make your presence known. What is your message? The voices responded, becoming slightly less indistinct, more lucid. Sarah could almost isolate individual words, but they remained too faint, too garbled. A mounting unease gripped her, a sense that they were trespassing on forbidden ground. Mark, maybe we should retreat, she urged, her voice laced with apprehension. This feels wrong. We're ill-prepared for this. He ignored her, utterly engrossed in his recording. Just a moment longer, Sarah, I'm on the verge of something, I can sense it. Abruptly, the voices merged into a single, bone-chilling utterance that remained indistinct, warped, but Sarah understood the words. They were delivered in a low, guttural growl that sent ice through her veins. Leave. The voice appeared to reverberate from within the very timber of the forest, from the earth beneath them. It was an order, a decree. Sarah seized Mark's arm, yanking him towards her. Mark, move, we need to leave now. He finally glanced up, his eyes wide with equal parts excitement and dread. Did you hear that? Did you comprehend its words? Yes, she replied, her voice a thread. And we're not remaining to decipher any more. She didn't pause for argument, she grabbed his hand and bolted, retracing their steps, the chilling command echoing in her ears. The forest seemed to constrict around them, the shadows deepening, the trees murmuring their disapproval as they fled, the screaming hollow. The command still reverberated, a primal growl etched into Sarah's memory. She pushed through the dense foliage, Mark now a determined shadow at her heels, his earlier hesitation replaced by feverish anticipation. Then, it shattered the night. A scream ripped through the air, not a mere cry, but a desolate keening that tore through the interwoven branches above, a sound of utter agony that ended abruptly with a wet, choking noise. An icy wave washed over Sarah, and she gripped a nearby root for purchase, her breath caught in her throat. Mark halted beside her, eyes alight, though not with fear. A strange elation sparked within them. Did you hear that? He breathed, his voice hushed. Hear it? Sarah managed, her own voice trembling. How could anyone miss it? What in God's name was that, Mark? I don't know, he whispered, awestruck. But we have to find out. He moved toward the sound, head tilted, acutely listening. Sarah remained frozen, her pulse a frantic drum against her ribs. Are you out of your mind? That sounded like someone was dying. We need to call it in. Call it in. Mark scoffed, turning back, his features illuminated by the fractured moonlight. To report what? A spectral wail. This is it, Sarah, this is why we came. This is not why we came. We're here to debunk, not to chase, whatever monstrosity birthed that sound. The echo of the scream still bounced within her skull, a ghastly composition of pain. Debunking felt like a distant, naive dream, decimated by the stark terror of the forest. Can't you see? This isn't some backwoods prank, this is real, Sarah, we can't ignore this. He gestured, pleading, toward the scream's origin. Someone, or something, is in desperate trouble. We have to see if we can help. Sarah wavered, reason screamed at her to flee, to put as much distance as possible between herself and this place, but the ever-present lure of the unexplained tugged at her, coupled with a prickle of responsibility. Could they genuinely turn a deaf ear to such a sound? It could be an animal, she offered weakly, grasping for a semblance of rationality. A fox, caught in a snare. Mark dismissed it with a shake of his head. That wasn't animal, Sarah, that was, once human, at least. The image of a lost and injured hiker, crying for rescue, flickered through her mind. Reluctantly, she sighed. Fine, she conceded, her voice heavy. But we call the authorities if we encounter anything remotely dangerous, and we stay together. Mark's grin returned, full of fervent exhilaration. Deal. They advanced, the undergrowth tightening its grip, the trees like silent observers pressing in around them. The air thickened, heavy with the cloying scent of damp earth mingled with something else, a metallic tang that made Sarah's stomach churn. The ground dipped, leading them into a hollow consumed by an unnatural gloom. Here, the trees were contorted and ancient, their branches reaching like brittle, decaying fingers. An oppressive hush descended, punctuated only by the rasp of their own breaths. "This place, it feels wrong," Sarah whispered, instinctively reaching for Mark's arm that he squeezed her hand, a gesture of reassurance, but his gaze remained fixed on the inky blackness ahead. "Stay close," he murmured, barely audible. They descended further, the terrain growing treacherous beneath their feet, strewn with fallen timber and decaying foliage. The metallic scent intensified, making Sarah's head swim. Abruptly, Mark stopped, his grip tightening on her hand. "Listen," he breathed, his voice a mere thread. Sarah strained, initially hearing only the whisper of wind through the leaves. Then, she caught it, a faint whimper, emanating from the hollow's depths, a low, guttural moan, steeped in agony and despair. The sound swelled, drawing closer, culminating in another, equally chilling scream. But this time, it was followed by a sound that plunged Sarah's blood into glacial freeze, a sickening, wet crunch. The ritual clearing. The snap reverberated, a ghastly percussion against Sarah's eardrums that clung like a shroud to the stagnant air. She plucked urgently at Mark's sleeve. "We have to go, now, back." He remained unresponsive, gaze riveted on the sound's origin. His pupils had ballooned, jaw hung loose, that he looked less the composed academic and more a hapless insect mesmerized by a lantern's gleam. "Mark." Sarah's grip tightened, shaking his arm with renewed force. "Wake up, did you hear that? This place, it's wrong." A delayed blink, a slow return from some unseen abyss. "Wrong? No, Sarah, this is extraordinary. We're on the verge of discovery." He resumed his trek, venturing deeper into the arboreal labyrinth, toward the source of the disturbing sound. Hesitation snagged at Sarah's resolve. Every fiber screamed for flight, for the solace of distance between her and whatever malignancy resided in the gloom. But she couldn't abandon Mark, not consumed as he was. "Fine," she conceded, her voice a strained threat, "but when I say we leave, we leave. No debate." He offered no acknowledgement, utterly consumed by the beckoning forest. The trees crowded closer, their interwoven boughs stealing what little lunar illumination had pierced the canopy. A chill permeated the air, laced with the musk of decaying leaves and something else, a metallic tang, sharp and unsettling, like aged iron and dried blood. An eternity later, they stumbled into a clearing that was a perfect circle, perhaps 30 feet across, awash in an unearthly argent luminescence. The moon blazed overhead, impossibly bright, sketching elongated, warped shadows that writhed at the clearing's edge. All ground vegetation had been removed, revealing stark, dark earth of unnatural smoothness. Inscribed upon the soil were symbols, not random scratches, but deliberate, meticulous patterns, spirals, circles cleaved by straight lines, geometric configurations that eluded Sarah's comprehension, yet stirred with a disquieting familiarity, resonating deep within her primeval instincts. Mark inhaled sharply, eyes wide with a collision of wonder and raw apprehension. That he ventured into the clearing, his eyes darting across the glyphs. "Incredible," he hushed, "a ritual ground. I knew it was here. I felt it." Sarah remained rooted at the edge, her skin prickling with unease. "Ritual ground, Mark, that's a massive assumption, isn't it? It could be anything: erosion, root patterns, animal activity." He was deaf to her concerns, drawn toward the clearing's heart, hands outstretched as if reaching for something immaterial. He knelt, tracing a symbol with his fingertip. "I can sense it," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "The energy, it's palpable here." "Mark, step away from that," Sarah urged, her voice laced with rising urgency. "We don't know what those are." He glanced up, his pupils dilated, eyes gleaming oddly. "Can't you feel it, Sarah? It's calling to us." "Calling to us? What are you even saying?" Sarah edged into the clearing, her pulse hammering against her ribs. The air felt dense, laden with a stifling power that made each breath a struggle. Mark rose, unsteady on his feet, his face was flushed, his eyes unnervingly vibrant. He began to speak, but the sounds that escaped his lips were alien, slurred, guttural, a cacophony that scraped against the edges of Sarah's sanity. Asterisk sanguis, vita, silva, accipio. Asterisk. Sarah flinched, nausea rising in her throat. Mark, cease, what are you chanting? He continued, his voice swelling, growing more insistent. The bizarre incantation reverberated through the clearing, harmonizing with the symbols etched into the earth. The shadows deepened, twisting and contorting into grotesque parodies of form. Asterisk offerimus, carnum, animum, silva, postulo, asterisk. Terror gripped Sarah, a vice around her heart. This wasn't Mark, this wasn't the skeptical, grounded companion she knew. Something had seized him, something primordial and malicious. She seized his arm, attempting to drag him away. Mark, please, you're frightening me. That we must leave this place. He shrugged her off with surprising strength, his gaze locked on hers, but devoid of all recognition. They were cold, vacant, illuminated by an alien luminescence. Asterisk silentium, tenebris, eternitas, silva, dominator, asterisk. As the final syllable fell, a gale roared through the clearing, snuffing out their flashlights. Sarah gasped as they were enveloped in absolute blackness. The sole illumination emanated from the preternaturally bright moon, casting elongated, distorted shadows that danced around them like mocking specters. Then, from the abyss, came a whispered voice, thin and reedy, yet imbued with an unfathomable malice. Welcome home. Sarah screamed, her mind blank. Instinct superseded thought. She bolted. Phantom footsteps. My lungs screamed with each breath, a fiery torment. Thorns raked my skin, insidious roots snared my ankles, yet slowing was unthinkable. Mark, the earlier stupor gone, surged ahead, now driven by a stark, instinctive dread that mirrored my own. That we fled blindly, propelled by a primal urge to survive. That voice, the chilling, sonorous greeting, lingered, a persistent goad to our already frantic pace. Yet, it wasn't just the voice's echo that spurred us on. It was the sound pursuing us. Initially, it was subtle. A mere susurrus of dry leaves, easily dismissed as wind or some nocturnal rustling. Gradually, it amplified, solidified, becoming intentional footfalls, deliberate, heavy footfalls, crushing through the underbrush in an unsettling cadence. They shadowed our every move. Did you hear that? I choked, my voice a mere breath against the frantic drumming of my pulse. Mark didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge me. That he simply accelerated, his breath now a series of shallow, panicked gasps. Stealing a glance behind, I saw only the consuming blackness, trees a solid barricade of night, but the sound resonated closer now, undeniably. The footsteps intensified, mirroring our escalating flight. No longer a distant echo, they were a stark, undeniable presence hot on our heels. A shiver snaked down my spine. It felt as if some unseen entity breathed upon me, malevolent and impossibly swift. Mark! I shrieked, my voice fracturing with terror. It's gaining. He stumbled but pressed on, his face gleaming pale with sweat in the fragmented moonlight filtering through the canopy. He finally spoke, his voice ragged and strained. Don't look, just keep running. Easier declared than achieved. The relentless footfalls closed the gap, each stride a hammer blow to our dwindling hope. They morphed from mere sound into a palpable threat, a harbinger of impending doom. My mind conjured grotesque visions, grasping, skeletal hands and the cold, hollow gaze of something ancient lurking in the shadows. I dug deep, my muscles protesting with molten agony. The terrain was a treacherous labyrinth of exposed roots and fallen timber, our progress perpetually undermined by the dense thicket. Each misstep, each averted fall, triggered a fresh wave of hysteria. The crackle of breaking branches was an auditory cattle prod. Whatever hunted us dispensed with all pretense of silence. It stalked us with a chilling confidence. The air thickened, pregnant with a dread that constricted my throat and left me gasping. We need to break line of sight. I screamed, desperate. We need to vanish. Mark shook his head, his eyes dilated with fear. Nowhere's safe, it knows where we are. He was right, the footsteps were remorseless, their tempo unwavering, they mimicked our frantic escape, a ghastly parody of our desperation that we were ensnared in a waking nightmare, preyed upon by something unseen, incomprehensible, inescapable. The trees seemed to coalesce around us, their branches weaving a suffocating net. The last vestiges of moonlight deserted us, plunging us into an absolute abyss. The hunter's tread grew so near I could feel the earth tremble beneath my bare feet. My heart thrashed against my ribcage, a frenzied rhythm against the encroaching silence. Then, with the abruptness of a snapped thread, the sound ceased. We bolted onward, propelled by momentum, our breath shredded. We crashed through a wall of briars, oblivious to the lacerations that we dared not pause, dared not turn. Finally, we collapsed against a wizened oak, our limbs shuddering with exhaustion and profound fear. The silence pressed down on us, broken only by the raspy wheeze of our lungs. Did it stop? I whispered, my voice a fragile reed. Mark remained mute, his stare fixed on the blackness that surrounded us, his eyes betraying a level of terror I'd never witnessed. He pointed a trembling finger toward the suffocating ring of trees. Look, he breathed, his voice a fragile exhalation. I followed his gaze. Initially, I perceived nothing but the impenetrable void of the woods. Then, gradually, shapes began to materialize, spectral shadows, amorphous forms, elusive movements flickering at the edge of perception. They were there, watching, waiting. A low growl resonated through the trees, a sound that pulsed within my very skeleton. It was no animalistic snarl, this was something else, primeval and baleful, a sound birthed from the heart of darkness itself. And then, I saw them, eyes. A multitude of them, glowing with a profane luminescence, piercing the darkness from the shadows. They surrounded us, encircling us, closing in. We were trapped, lost in the dark. A strangled gasp tore from my throat, a soundless echo of the unseen predator whose growl lingered in my memory. Emerald eyes, like living coals, studded the gloom, an unnerving audience to our plight. Abruptly, Mark shoved me ahead. Go, Sarah, get out of here. His voice, a raspy croak, barely pierced the susurrus of the woods. No hesitation. A jolt of pure adrenaline incinerated doubt, obliterated thought. I bolted, heedless, crashing through the tangled vegetation. Branches whipped, claws raked, the heavy air thick with the rot of the forest invaded my lungs, each breath a searing torment. The fog, previously a subtle veil, now writhed around me, a dizzying maelstrom. My world shrank to inches, the trees morphed into grotesque sentinels, their limbs contorted, grasping. A frantic glance revealed only the swirling gray. Mark vanished within its embrace. Mark! I shrieked, my voice cracking. Only the woods replied, a silence so absolute it felt like a physical weight, crushing me. I stumbled onward, driven by the primal urge to flee, to widen the gap between myself and the lurking threat. I tried again, louder, desperation fueling my cry. Mark, where are you? Still nothing, just the wind sighing through the canopy. A mocking whisper. My heart hammered a wild tattoo against my ribs, a desperate rhythm against the suffocating quiet. I wrestled down the rising panic, forcing my focus onto the immediate forward motion. I had to find him. Abandonment felt impossible, yet, a chilling voice of reason, a desperate hope for logic, countered. He told me to run. Was he offering himself as bait for my escape? The thought churned my stomach. I tripped over a hidden root, sprawling onto the sodden earth. The impact stole my breath. For a moment, I lay paralyzed, the chills seeping into my very core. The fog tightened, a suffocating shroud amplifying my isolation. Was this it? The end, lost in the impenetrable dark, utterly alone, at the mercy of the unseen thing that ruled these woods. My skepticism, my constant armor, felt thin and useless now. Flimsy as paper against a storm that I hauled myself upright, ignoring the chorus of aches and protests. Keep moving, fine. Mark, even a futile effort was better than surrender. Mark. I screamed again, my voice raw. Answer me, damn it. The ensuing silence felt heavier, more malevolent, not just the absence of sound, but a tangible sense of being watched, hunted. The burning eyes, unseen now, remained a presence, scorching my back, charting my every flinch that I lurched forward, hands outstretched, blindly navigating the thick undergrowth. The branches snagged, the thorns tore, but the pain barely registered them. My senses were screaming, honed to a razor's edge, searching for any sign, any sound, that would signal Mark's survival. But there was nothing, only the darkness, the fog, and the suffocating quiet, lost, utterly and irrevocably lost, not merely in the labyrinth of trees, but on a deeper, more profound level, consumed by the forest, subjugated by its unseen master, lost to myself. The realization landed like a body blow that I was alone and terrified. The forest had devoured Mark, and I was next. Visions of madness. The fog was a tangible dread, a woolen shroud woven from fear and the reek of loam. Each snapping twig sounded like pursuit. Sarah blundered onward, thorns snagging her clothes, the woods an intricate trap. Mark, she rasped, the sound dissolving into the oppressive stillness. Only her heart hammered a frantic reply. Then, a phantom caught her EYE. The periphery, a wavering shadow. A woman, spectral and thin, draped in a ragged gown. She stood sentinel beneath a wizened oak, face hidden in shadow. Exuding an aura of profound grief, Sarah blinked. The apparition vanished, leaving only swirling mist, just the light. She mumbled, grasping for reason, tricking me. Yet, a tremor betrayed her waning certainty. She pushed forward, her doubt cracking under the strain. A breathy sigh ghosted her ear, so delicate she almost wrote it off as the wind. Sarah, it murmured, a frigid caress. She froze, every sense heightened, searching the thick undergrowth. Nothing. Hello? She ventured, only to be met by the hollow return of her own voice. She dismissed it as a delusion conjured by exhaustion and fear. She quickened her stride, desperate to escape. Whatever it was, the whispers returned, growing bolder, coalescing into a chorus chanting her name. They emanated from nowhere and everywhere, a maddening orchestra of lost souls. Sarah, turn back. Sarah, join us. Sarah. Terror, a glacial spike, pierced her fragile resolve. She pressed her hands tight against her ears, yet the voices tunneled through, infiltrating her thoughts. This was beyond tricks of light, beyond logical explanation. It was something else, something insidious and determined. Abruptly, reality fractured. The trees shimmered and contorted, their limbs twisting into grotesque parodies of nature. The ground beneath her morphed into a churning mire. She gasped, plunged into a vision, a brutal scene. Unfolding before her, she stood in a clearing, bathed in a sickly, emerald luminescence. Around a crude stone altar, figures shrouded in black chanted in a guttural cadence. A young woman, bound and silenced, lay prone on the stone, eyes wide with stark terror. A robed figure raised a gleaming blade, and Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, a silent scream building. The vision lurched, the scene dissolving into another nightmare scenario. A pit of bones, overflowing with skeletal remains, their hollow sockets accusing the heavens. A hangman's rope swayed gently, a cadaver dangling limply. The air reeked of decay and despair. Nausea surged as the ghastly images burned into her mind. She stumbled back, panting, the visions fading like a nightmare upon waking. But the persistent dread lingered, a leaden weight in her chest. The forest pulsed with a dark energy, imbued with the echoes of unspeakable acts. The rationalizations she had so desperately clung to seemed paltry against the all-encompassing darkness. Her skepticism crumbled, supplanted by a raw, visceral fear. The apparitions, the voices, the visions, they were not illusions, not delusions. They were real, a manifestation of the forest's haunted past, a glimpse into a realm beyond comprehension. Driven by a primal urge to survive, she forced herself onward. She needed to find Mark, not just for him, but to salvage her own sanity. Yet, even as she ran, the whispers intensified, weaving themselves into a new, more sinister message. There is no escape, Sarah, you belong, Sarah, you are one of us now, Sarah. The words resonated in her mind, a chilling premonition threatening to overwhelm her. She pressed on, the boundary between reality and nightmare blurring. The woods had awakened something within her, a susceptibility to the unseen forces lurking in the shadows. She was no longer merely an observer, a skeptical researcher. She was a participant, a pawn in an incomprehensible game. A victim of the madness that clung to Epping Forest, the cottage of lost souls. The susurrus had swelled into a cacophony, a maddening orchestra of hushed promises and guttural menaces that gnawed at Sarah's sanity. Each rustle of leaves, each snap of a fallen branch underfoot, magnified the unsettling sounds, blurring the line between reality and delusion. She pressed onward, fueled by the fragile, fervent belief that Mark still lived, trapped somewhere within this labyrinth of gnarled trees and gathering gloom. Hours dissolved into a seamless stretch of time. The fog, though diminished, still lingered, affording fleeting glimpses of the moon, a mere shard of frigid light piercing the dense canopy. Just as her muscles screamed in protest, she spotted it, a deeper void amidst the inky woods, an amorphous shape suggesting something more than just trees. A fledgling hope took flight within her. Ignoring the sharp kiss of thorns tearing at her skin, she forced her way through a dense thicket and stumbled into a small clearing. There, slumped like a discarded doll, was a cottage. It was antediluvian, its timbers eroded and decaying, the roof slumped in weary resignation. Vacant window frames stared blankly into the night, offering no comfort, no welcome. Ivy, thick as constrictors, scaled the walls, choking the last vestiges of life from the rotting wood. The surrounding air was stagnant, heavy with the reek of damp earth and something else, something sharp, like burnt caramel and decomposition. Sarah faltered. A primal warning pulsed through her, urging her to retreat, to flee from this haven of palpable desolation. But the image of Mark, isolated and possibly injured, propelled her forward. She approached warily, her hand instinctively closing around the small knife nestled in her pocket. The front door stood ajar, groaning softly in the breeze. Sarah nudged it open further, the sound amplified in the stillness. The interior was steeped in shadow, save for a single shaft of moonlight slicing through a gap in the roof, illuminating a patch of dust-laden floor. The air inside was thick with the stench of mildew and something indefinably wrong. It raised gooseflesh on her arms, prickled the nape of her neck. She fumbled for her lighter, flicked it into life, the fragile flame painting the walls with dancing specters. The cottage comprised a single room. A crumbling fireplace dominated one wall, its stones blackened with generations of soot. A precarious table stood center stage, cloaked in a thick layer of grime. In one corner, a jumbled pile of rags lay in a heap, likely the remnants of a bed. Sarah moved with deliberate caution, senses heightened. Nothing stirred, nothing breathed, but the sensation of being watched, of unseen eyes dissecting her every move, intensified. A book lay on the table, partially concealed by dust. It was small, bound in time-worn leather, its pages the color of old ivory. Sarah reached for it, her fingers trembling almost imperceptibly. As she lifted it, a plume of dust erupted, causing her to cough. She reignited the lighter, bringing the flame closer to the book. The title was barely discernible, etched in faded gold lettering, Family Chronicle. Sarah carefully opened the book, the spine protesting with a brittle crack. The initial pages were empty, but then the script began, a meticulous, elegant hand that gradually degenerated as the journal continued. The initial entries chronicled a family, a husband, a wife, and their 2 young children, who had sought refuge in the cottage, hoping to find serenity and isolation. they wrote of the forest's beauty, of the joy of coexisting with nature, but as the months slipped by, a subtle transformation occurred in their prose. The entries grew shorter, more disjointed, laden with anxieties and burgeoning disquiet. The husband detailed strange sounds piercing the night, whispers carried on the wind, shadows flickering at the edge of his vision. The wife wrote of tormenting nightmares, of an escalating feeling of surveillance, of a presence permeating the very bones of the cottage. Accusations followed. The husband branded the wife as delusional, succumbing to superstition. The wife accused the husband of growing detached and cold, of no longer truly seeing her, of succumbing to some dark influence emanating from the woods. The children were mentioned less frequently, their names fading from the narrative, but in one horrifying entry, the wife wrote of her children speaking with alien voices, their eyes gleaming with an unnatural luminescence. As Sarah delved deeper, the handwriting deteriorated further, the sentences fractured and incoherent, the final passages alluded to arcane rituals, to unspeakable sacrifices, to a desperate attempt to placate whatever malevolent entity had taken root in the forest. The concluding entries were nothing more than illegible scratches, frantic and desperate, culminating in a single, chilling phrase repeated ad nauseum: "It desires us that it desires us all." Sarah slammed the journal shut with a shudder, the oppressive weight of its tragic chronicle crushing her. The forest's whispers seemed to amplify, growing more insistent, as though the very trees echoed the despair of the family who had lived and perished in this unholy sanctuary. She wasn't alone, and she knew it. Possession. The air lay thick and oppressive around the cottage, a leaden weight pressing down on Sarah. She recoiled from the decaying threshold, the journal's dire pronouncements reverberating in her skull. A sharp crack splintered the silence behind her. Whipping around, she felt her pulse leap into overdrive. He was there, outlined by the spectral glow leaking through the canopy. Mark. A surge of relief, incandescent and keen, washed through her. "Mark," she called, stepping forward. "Where have you been?" "I was so worried, sick." But as she closed the distance, the joyous wave soured into icy premonition. His eyes, empty chasms where warmth and zeal once danced, bottomless pits reflecting only the forest's encroaching gloom. His face, usually so quick to animation, was now a frozen tableau of disquieting placidity. "Mark," she tried again, her voice barely audible. He remained mute, a towering, spectral figure against the ancient wood. Then, a rasping, guttural sound emanated from his throat, an abrasive noise that seemed to flay her eardrums, utterly unnatural. "Sarah," he ground out, the voice warped, a grotesque imitation of Mark's familiar timbre. It was as though an alien entity spoke through him, something primordial and sinister. The atmosphere crackled with unseen energy, the leaves thrashed wildly, though not a breath of wind stirred. The very woods seemed to stagnate, holding themselves in rapt anticipation of something awful. He moved then, with an alacrity that belied his normal, somewhat awkward frame. He launched himself at her, his hands splayed, fingers hooked into grotesque claws. Sarah shrieked, stumbling backward to evade his assault. The skepticism that had been her steadfast defense shattered completely. This was not Mark. This was an impostor, twisted and defiled by the forest's malignant core. Pure instinct took over. She had to survive this. She ducked beneath his flailing limbs and scrambled away, using the rough hide of an old oak for cover. He faltered, momentarily disoriented, granting her a few invaluable seconds to think that he was stronger, supernaturally so. Whatever force possessed him had bestowed him with an unnatural power. A direct confrontation was suicide. She had to outwit him. "Mark, it's me, Sarah," she pleaded, hoping to penetrate the darkness that had enveloped him. "Fight it, Mark, don't let it take you." Her words were futile, his gaze remained vacant, his motions stilted and eerie. He circled the tree, his harsh growls filling the night. He sprang again, swifter this time. Sarah dodged, but his fingers snagged her arm, tearing at her jacket. A shock of frigid, nauseating energy jolted through her, leaving her momentarily paralyzed with unease that he exploited his advantage, trapping her against the rough bark. His face hovered inches from hers, the hollow eyes burning into her very essence, the distorted voice wheezed, "Join us, Sarah, become one with the wood." Terror ignited a surge of adrenaline. She slammed her knee into his groin that he doubled over, struggling for air, affording her the opportunity to shove him away. Regaining her feet, she snatched up a discarded branch, brandishing it like a makeshift bludgeon. "Stay away from me," she cried, her voice shaking despite her resolve. He straightened, his eyes blazing with unholy fury. He charged, and she swung the branch with all her strength, connecting with his shoulder. He grunted, unfazed. The wood snapped under the pressure of his assault. He seized her wrist, his grip a crushing vice. Agony lanced up her arm. She cried out, kicking at his shins, finally breaking his hold. Staggering backward, she frantically searched for a weapon. Her fingers closed around a jagged stone. She flung it. Found its mark, striking his forehead. He reeled, momentarily stunned. It was enough. She didn't want to injure him. Not truly. This wasn't Mark, just his stolen face. She loathed this forest. She loathed what it was doing. She had to escape its clutches. Spinning around, she bolted into the forest's inky depths. She could hear him giving chase, his heavy footfalls thundering against the soft earth. His corrupted voice echoed among the trees, calling her name, a perverted invitation to join the all-consuming darkness. She ran without direction, tripping over exposed roots and fallen limbs, the forest's sinister laughter mocking her with every bound. She didn't know her destination, only that she needed distance. Distance from Mark, distance from the cottage, distance from the malign influence that had consumed him. Daring a peek over her shoulder, she saw him gaining. His eyes, luminous in the moonlight, burned with an inhuman hunger. She pushed her body to its absolute limit, ignoring her screaming lungs and aching muscles. Survival was paramount. She had to discover a way to shatter the forest's dominion over Mark. But as she fled, a horrifying truth surfaced. She couldn't simply outpace the forest. It was omnipresent, a living entity, present in the trees, the shadows, the very essence of the air she inhaled, and it was closing the gap. Escape from the woods. Her knee throbbed, a dull counterpoint to the frantic pounding of her heart. Mark lay still, face down in the leaf litter. Sarah scrambled back, every muscle screaming in protest. Had she killed him? The thought was a cold fist squeezing her insides. She crept closer, her hand trembling as she reached for his neck, searching for a pulse. Faint, but there. He was alive. Relief warred with terror. Alive, but not Mark, not the Mark she knew. The journal's words echoed in her mind. The forest takes, and it corrupts. Had it already taken him, corrupted him beyond repair? There was no time to ponder. The air vibrated with a low, guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the trees themselves. The growl intensified, morphing into a chorus of whispers, laced with malice and a chilling, unidentifiable hunger. Mark. Sarah shook him hard, ignoring the spike of pain in her knee. "Mark, wake up, we have to go." His body remained slack. She tried again, slapping his cheek, harder this time. His eyes snapped open, vacant and devoid of recognition. A slow smile stretched across his face, a grotesque parody of his usual warm grin. "He likes you, Sarah," the voice rasped, thick with an alien timbre. "He thinks you're ripe." Sarah shuddered. She grabbed his arm, yanking him to his feet. He stumbled, his movements jerky and unnatural. "Move," she yelled, pulling him forward. "We have to get out of here." He resisted, his feet dragging against the forest floor. The smile remained fixed, unsettlingly serene. Escape is futile. Sarah ignored him, her grip tightening on his arm. She ran, dragging him with her, back the way they had come. Twigs snapped underfoot, the sound amplified in the suffocating silence that had fallen, punctuated only by their ragged breaths and the increasingly frenzied whispers closing in around them. The whispers coalesced into distinct words, laced with hatred and accusation. "Trespassers, defilers, you will pay." Mark stumbled again, nearly pulling her down with him. She hauled him upright, her lungs burning. The trees seemed to lean in, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to ensnare them. Sarah risked a glance over her shoulder. Nothing, but the feeling of being watched, hunted, was overwhelming. Then she heard it, footsteps, heavy, rhythmic thuds pounding the earth behind them, growing closer with terrifying speed. They weren't alone. Something was chasing them. "Faster, Mark, faster." He didn't respond, his eyes glazed over, his body moving with a strange, detached obedience to her tugging. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by high-pitched, keening screams that tore through the air. Sarah pushed herself harder, her muscles screaming, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She could see it now, a faint glimmer of light through the trees, the edge of the forest. Freedom. They burst through the tree line, stumbling onto a narrow, overgrown path. Sarah stopped, gasping for air, pulling Mark to a halt beside her. The sounds of pursuit faded slightly, but the feeling of dread remained, a cold weight in her stomach. The path led to a small clearing, bathed in the pale glow of the moon, and standing in the center of the clearing, blocking their escape, was a figure, tall and gaunt, his face a mask of decaying flesh, his eyes burning with an unholy light that he wore the tattered remains of a dark, clerical robe, its fabric clinging to his skeletal frame. An apparition, conjured from the darkest depths of the forest's history. Elder Silas, his lips peeled back in a silent snarl, revealing teeth filed to sharp points. A low, guttural growl emanated from his throat, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath their feet. "You dare to flee?" His voice echoed in the clearing, a distorted parody of human speech. "You trespass upon hallowed ground, desecrate the sanctity of this place. You will not escape my judgment." He raised a hand, its fingers gnarled and claw-like. The air crackled with energy, a palpable sense of malevolence. Sarah felt a wave of nausea wash over her, her knees threatening to buckle. Mark remained still, his face blank, his eyes fixed on the apparition. The grotesque smile returned, widening until it seemed his face would split. "He welcomes you," the voice rasped through Mark's lips. "He has been waiting for so long." Elder Silas took a step forward, his eyes burning into Sarah's soul. This was it, the end, trapped between a possessed friend and a vengeful spirit, with no hope of escape. The forest had claimed them, the forest secret. Desecrated? I snapped, the rush of adrenaline briefly eclipsing raw terror. Silas drifted closer, his spectral gaze searing into me. "We came to comprehend. To observe," he intoned. Mark, still struggling against the grotesque distortions of his own flesh, emitted a strangled groan, alien and disturbing. The voice that emerged was a grating echo, devoid of human warmth. "You seek knowledge, where it slumbers." My thoughts churned. Silas's accusation of desecration, coupled with the entity's pronouncement of disturbed slumber. What if this wasn't mere malevolence, but something far more primal? Fragmented knowledge of physics surfaced, energy fields, the inviolable laws of conservation, electromagnetism's potential to interact with anything. "Electromagnetic fields," I blurted, surprising myself. Silas paused, a flicker of something, intrigue, in his hollow eyes. "Such prattle," the possessed Mark rasped. Ignoring him, I pressed forward, logic battling against primal fear. "You're composed of energy, right? Residual energy anchored to this place, like a recording. Recordings can be corrupted, frequencies can be jammed." It was a reckless gamble, a scientist's desperate plea against the uncanny. I rummaged in my backpack, fingers clumsy, seeking my phone. The battery icon flashed direly, but maybe, just maybe. "Sarah, what are you doing?" For a fleeting instant, Mark's voice, clear and present, cut through the guttural rasp. "Run, please, get out." I ignored him, accessing my phone's sound settings. I needed a specific frequency, a discordant note to shatter the energy field enveloping Silas and, hopefully, loosen the entity's hold on Mark. That I tapped the screen, engaging a tone generator app, one sometimes used for equipment calibration. That a low thrum resonated from the speaker. Silas seemed impervious. Pointless gestures, he murmured, gliding closer, frantically. I adjusted the frequency, sweeping across the spectrum. Nothing. My heart hammered, a frantic tattoo against the oppressive silence. Think, Sarah, think, what could disrupt a field? What induces interference? Then the answer struck, feedback, raw noise, randomness. That I switched to the white noise generator, amplified the volume to its max, and held the phone aloft, aimed directly at Silas. The forest detonated in a static storm, a blizzard of sound that grated against my eardrums. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then, Silas began to fracture, the edges of his spectral form dissolved, like a corrupted image struggling to hold resolution. That he recoiled, a semblance of agony twisting his ethereal features. The hold on Mark seemed to weaken, too. He gasped, his body sagging against a tree, the unnatural contortions replaced by tremors. His eyes, wide with terror and bewilderment, locked onto mine. Sarah, run away. He croaked. That IT was working, but the phone's battery blinked ominously red. Time was evaporating. Mark, take my hand, now. He stumbled toward me, movements erratic and feeble. As his fingers brushed mine, a jolt of icy energy surged through me. We were both tethered now, bound to this place by whatever dark sorcery clung to the trees. Ignoring the searing sensation in my hand, I hauled him toward the path, away from Silas, away from the tainted clearing. The white noise screamed from my phone, a fragile bulwark against the encroaching darkness. We bolted, stumbling and tripping, the forest floor a treacherous obstacle. Coarse underfoot, branches snagged at our clothes, and the whispers, though receding, still trailed us, a chorus of insidious voices urging us back. Finally, we burst through the trees, emerging onto the blessed gravel path. The car was a sanctuary, a beacon in a nightmare sea. I practically shoved Mark into the passenger seat, then scrambled behind the wheel, slamming the door, fingers trembling. I fumbled with the keys, desperate to ignite the engine. When it roared to life, I didn't hesitate. I slammed into gear and peeled out of the forest, leaving the whispers and specters in our wake. Silence reigned in the car. A heavy, pregnant quietude born of the horrors we'd witnessed. Mark stared out the window, face ashen. I gripped the wheel, knuckles bone white, fixated on the road ahead. Finally, nearing the outskirts of London, Mark spoke, his voice a fragile thread. What was that? I shook my head, unable to articulate the maelstrom within me. I don't know, Mark. I honestly don't know. We reached his apartment wordlessly. As he turned to depart, his hand paused on the door handle. He met my gaze, his eyes pools of fear mixed with a strange, almost reverent, wonder. We can't breathe a word, he stated, voice resolute. About any of this? I nodded, comprehension solidifying. We had glimpsed something profound, something ancient and formidable, something beyond humanity's current grasp. The forest guards its secrets, I responded, and we must uphold them. We both understood, unspoken, that Epping Forest had irrevocably altered us. It had purged our skepticism, dismantled our arrogance, and left us with a bone-deep understanding of the inexplicable. We sought specters and unearthed something far more terrifying. The forest pulsed with a dark power, a perilous energy best left undisturbed. We had survived, but were now inextricably bound to its secrets, forever stalked by the whispers and shadows lurking amidst its venerable trees, and we knew, with a chilling certainty, that we would never be the same.